All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Commissioner Jeremy Sherman. I'm the chairperson of ANC 1A, and I'm calling this meeting to order on May 21st, 2025 at 7:07 p.m. We have a long agenda ahead of us, so let's get right into it, and I'll turn it over to our secretary for a roll call and termination form.
Commissioner Sherman?
Present.
Commissioner Morales?
Present.
Commissioner Davidson?
Present.
Commissioner Perry?
Present.
Commissioner Batia?
Present.
Commissioner Easley? I am present. Commissioner Thomas Davis?
Present.
Commissioner Nolan? Present. That's last second. Commissioner Ockham? Present. Commissioner Miller? So, Commissioner's not here? He's still before.
All right, thank you, Secretary Easley. Really quick, I'm sorry I mentioned this earlier before we go into approval of our agenda. So reminder, we do have some new tech today. I think folks can hear us online. We do have about 15 folks online and some folks here in the audience. We appreciate our hybrid setup. To commissioners, please make sure you speak into the microphone so that our online attendees can hear us clearly. Second, just a quick reminder, as we did last month, let's maintain respect. Let's maintain adherence to our time limits of speaking. Decorum is important. We're going to disagree on things, and that's normal and natural. But please address any issues directly to me, and we will work through them so that we maintain a smooth and respectful meeting. All right, so with that, we're going to go into the approval of the agenda. Please take a look at the agenda. Make sure everything looks right to you. Are there any edits or additions before we make a resolution, a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm going to object to the placement on the agenda of R2521 and R2524. Our rules explicitly state that any applicant for a grant appear before the commission to address the substance of the grant. Additionally, it does require at least 3 weeks advance notice before being placed or before the commission. So I am trying to understand, one, what are we doing to waive the requirements of those two matters? And again, two, if we're going to continue to set precedents whereby we're disregarding the rules, I understand the nature of this and talk about it at the committee of the whole meeting, but it strikes me that we knew War Pride was coming. We knew that we were going down this road. So why are we at a place where we're asking us to fast track these grants, but we wouldn't do it in any other circumstance? So yes. I'm going to object to those. Again, these are rules. Unless there is a motion to waive those rules, which it should not, there is a problem.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner.
I would like to make a motion to waive the rules as applied to R25-0021 and R25-0024. If we need to segregate those, do we need to sever those motions? I'm happy to do so as well.
I don't believe that motion needs to be in order right now. We can do that when we arrive. We're just on the approval of the agenda. So we can waive it when we get there, and we can discuss that then. Commissioner Thomas Davis, can you explain what the issue with 21 is? That's not a grant.
I'm sorry. I actually thought both. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase my, I'm sorry. It looks like the other one was taken off. So my issue with 24.
Only 24. Okay. So this was discussed at our committee of the whole 2 weeks ago. This commission did pass a resolution allocating $6,500 for World Pride activities. So it's been discussed. I understand your request here. I'm going to suggest we put that to a vote of the
Are the applicants before us?
No, the applicants will not be attending.
Okay, so my point stands. I will stipulate that we waive the 3-week requirement. However, we should not be in the business of saying applicants should not come before us and justify why we are giving them all the money that we're giving them. in this particular case, I would urge colleagues to not go down this road. Because again, we continue to set precedent, and in this case, we're saying we can consider any grant application and no one ever needs to come.
Yeah, Commissioner, I understand your point, thank you. I understand it, we're right now in just the approval of the agenda, let's
That needs
discuss.
to be addressed if this is to stay.
When we get to that item, we can vote it down if we disagree.
That's it.
Mr.
Yes,
Chair,
Commissioner
I would like to move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, there's a second to approve the agenda. Is there any dissent on this or questions? Yes.
May we move R 25-025 to consent agenda?
2.5 to consent agenda. Is there any opposition to that?
I object.
Okay. All right, there's still a motion on the floor to approve the agenda. We did hear concerns. There's still a motion to approve it as is. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
No.
Any abstentions? All right, this does pass. Our agenda is approved. If there's disagreement about things, we'll get to those items. We're going to do the reading and the approval of the prior meeting minutes. You can view those. Let's actually make sure we drop our meeting agenda in the chat for the Zoom participants here as well. We'll do that so you can all follow along. You can also go to anc1a.org and follow along. Yes, if you can do it. You can read our minutes, which are linked in our agenda. Are there any questions regarding the minutes? Motion on the floor to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, is there any dissent on this? No, it passes, okay. Let's move into report of officers. Going first, Secretary Beasley.
Actually, one quick one.
Yeah. Right.
Secretary report, Commission passed 4 resolutions in April, which were deemed to be, need to be transmitted to agencies. 2 of which received affirmative responses of acknowledgement. Those 2 were Commissioner Thomas Davis's accelerating small business and revitalizing economic development resolution, and the other one which received an acknowledgement was Commissioner Miller, I believe it was Commissioner Batia's opposition to DDOT's opposition notice of intent 2592 TSD from the District Department of Transportation. The other 2 have yet to receive the 10-day acknowledgement, which I requested. Just as a reminder, agencies are required to respond within 60 days with reports from what we require of them. So I will be following up with those 2 other resolutions, as well as the 2 to the Department of Public Works that I sent in March, requesting that they put back the trash cans that they removed from my single member district. I still have not heard back from them, so I will be bugging the director about this again. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Secretary Beasley? Okay, seeing none, over to Treasurer Rouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll be speaking about this more in depth when we get to this agenda item down the road. We're going to be voting and discussing the quarterly financial report for fiscal year 25 quarter 2. As of right now, we ended quarter 2 with a positive balance of $51,442.49. The recent transactions that we've authorized as a commission for various grants and other expenditures are not going to be reflected on this report. They'll be reflected on Q3. But to sum it up, we are a good financial statement. I have any questions.
Thank you. Questions? All right, seeing none, moving right on. All right, that brings us to our general speeches and public comments. For those listening online, you can raise your hand if you do have any comments you want to make. This is a time for general speeches. Members of the community can offer public comment on general matters, things before the commission, on the agenda, the work of our committees, and make any announcements happening in the community. We do keep this to about 1 minute per speaker. I know that's short, we have a long agenda, so we appreciate your brevity. So we'll open the floor now. Let's start with commissioners. Any announcements? Yeah, Commissioner Knoll.
I'll be brief. It is my unfortunate task to announce due to some unexpected life circumstances that I will have to be moving from Columbia Heights at the end of the month and resigning my post. So just wanted to say to any 1A09 constituents listening in, it's been an honor to serve you even for just these short 6 months, and I'm sure the rest of the commissioners in 1A will be more than happy to help you with it.
Thanks, Commissioner Knoll. Any other announcements? Yes. Commissioner Achenbach.
Thank you, Commissioner Sherman. Very happy to be here. I'm the newest member, so following an announcement of a departure, I get to announce an arrival. Many of you knew Mukta Bukade, who served very well as the 1A07 commissioner before me. Unfortunately, she had to leave. We had other pressing issues in her life. So I've been able to take this up. I wanted to thank very much members of my SMT. My best to represent you. I'm very happy to join this with the people. So impressed so far. Really excited to be part of this group. Also wanted to mention for Commissioner Miller, who's not here today, we as an ANC are supporting World Pride, which is coming up very soon. And I've been working with her with resources. We have some stickers that are available to our attending today, all the commissioners. And on Saturday at the farmers market, we'll make sure that people can grab those to express their pride for ANC in World Pride. Also, we have a resources postcard that will be heading out so people can see what's available in the community and see the large for LGBTQIA plus community. So thanks very much for being here.
Great, thanks so much, Commissioner, and welcome. Congratulations on your role. Okay, any other commissioners? Yes, Stacey.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for attending. Just making the announcement that Commissioner Knoll and I put in budget requests and purchased like 5 pounds of native wildflower seeds and we packaged them up. And we will be at the Columbia Heights Farmers Market on Saturday. Just getting them out to residents. So please come back to the Farmers Market, get some native wildflower seeds, get some World Pride stickers, and come show with us.
Any other commissioners want to make an announcement? All right, we'll go to the public. I see hands online. We'll start in person here. Yes, go right ahead. Sure. Do we have a microphone? You can just state your name and then.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Cedric Kennedy up in Park Road. That's 1A05. That's my first ANC meeting, so thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'll try to keep 200 minutes over the guidelines. I want to talk briefly about public safety in the neighborhood and kind of the wave of business closures we've seen, especially on the DCUSA complex. I heard last week that new sports bars closed permanently now. We have seen Petco, DSW, CVS, others. So it's kind of turning into a ship of these storefronts. And in my mind, and people I talk to, it's kind of clear what one of the primary causes is, which is a breakdown in public order, a feeling of lack of public safety. I understand that homicides have come down in the city since the peak. But just the other visible causes and general feeling disorder feels like it's gotten worse. So people don't really linger, they put a target and start away, it seems, in this neighborhood. So, just in the neighborhood, as someone walking around, you got hard drug use openly, dealing, groups of mass teams running around, which be in school, and kind of unhoused people in physical distress, harassing pedestrians. Which is really disconcerting for someone who wants to take back to business, walk around, constant shoplifting, I hope for business either. So there's a broader sense of disorder. And I've seen the NPD's business speed patrol a couple times, which is nice, but really just a couple of occasions. And mostly to keep the police to stay in their cars. We've seen data that I know there's less police total in the city since pre-COVID, but the arrests for officers and other measures of activity have also gone down. So I guess I want to encourage the commission to do anything you can to encourage more community policing, more activity with the resources we do have, more support. I'm new here, so I'm not familiar with all of your efforts here. I don't presume you're not doing something. But I just want to speak in support of any initiatives you have to, again, get them out of the cars into the neighborhood. and so on and so forth. On the agenda, I saw an earlier version that there was some U.S. Attorney's Office here. I'll be curious to that presentation if that's happening as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm gonna use my time. This opportunity, if I may.
Yes, were there any, we'll try to limit this, we can keep it short, to not do ton of back and forth, but open it up for commissioners to respond if they'd like to. Let's go, comments, takes, then.
I'm just gonna use my opportunity.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say, so we have been working diligently to, one, deal with the wave of small business closures. I had a measure that the commission passed last meeting that will open up an opportunity to have a hopefully robust discussion with the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economics, the development and a host of other agency partners. That is an issue we're acutely, focused on. I don't know if we've done enough policy-wise to create the environment that will attract business. There's been a lot of time spent on this commission talking about recruiting businesses. But that's not going to help when we have businesses leaving and we don't have an environment that's going to attract them. So totally hear you on that. Public safety wise, we actually had a community safety and engagement walk earlier this month, I'm sorry. And we actually did not have a ton of agency partners join that walk to actually put eyes on a lot of the issues that you are talking about. So, public service announcement to the office of, the Mayor's Office of Community Relations and Services, like we need agency partners to come out and join us on those walks so that DPW, DLCP, DDOT, all of those agencies see the problems we're constantly lifting up, the problems that our residents are saying we need fixed. So we totally hear you on that. There is a coordinated strategy happening. I can't say that it's going to happen in the time frame we all wanted to keep residents here that have been here for a very long time, to hopefully stop the hemorrhaging of all of our small businesses, and hopefully just get to a place, as you said, where we're just creating a sense of safety. Even if it's not physically always there, you have that sense that I can walk down the block, I can go to a shop, I can actually stay and kind of linger in the neighborhood. So totally hear you on that. Happy to work with you and continue to get as many ideas as possible.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Commissioner Easley?
30 seconds.
Yeah.
What was your name again?
Oh, Cedric Kenny.
Cedric Kenny, Billy Easley. I'll share my contact information with you. I serve as the co-chair of our Public Safety Committee along with Commissioner Carlo Perry. And I want you to know that every person on this, I think I'm comfortable saying this, every commissioner has heard these issues and knows that it's extremely important for us to respond in a way that doesn't just rely on officers, that it's a whole community approach to this topic. It involves working with our small businesses and involves working with the mayor's office, working with anchor institutions like one of the ones we're in right now to build a response that deals with the public order issues that you raise, and also makes us a safer community by creating a sort of business environment where this is like lose isn't going to close down. So I welcome you to join, you don't have to join one of our debates, but to attend one of them, attend some of our public safety walks that we've had. We've had one with the 3rd District and with the 4th District. And they're doing the work, but they need to do some more work as well. Thank you for coming. We'll talk more. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Commissioner. Really quick, I'll just note, we do have a measure later on in the agenda that you might be interested in. Is the resolution of support for our Neighborhood Management Authority Act, which is legislation before the council that may speak to some of the economic development issues in the neighborhood. Okay, we're going to keep going. Are there other announcements, public comments here in person? Okay, let's go to online. I think I see we have one hand up.
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Hey, Estelle, can you hear us?
Oh, hi. Sorry. Yes. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Estelle, Councilmember Nadeau's Director of Constituent Services. A few quick updates from our office that I'd like to share. So first, the mayor has finally submitted her FY 2026 budget proposal to the district's chief financial officer, and we expect the council to receive this on May 27th, with hearings starting right after. And this is your chance to make your voice heard during this budget process, and I'll share a link more about how to get involved with this process. A few public safety announcements. MPD will soon install a handful of CCTV cameras around Ward 1 and with two designated for ANC 1A that I saw, one at 15th and Harvard Street and one north on Sherman Avenue. And these are to help deter crime in these areas. Also, we understand that there have been a few incidents around Fairmont Street that have been brought to our attention, and Commissioner Davidson and I are working to coordinate a call with stakeholders and the community. Additionally, Inner City, Reverend Judy mentioned that Inner City Collaborative through the joint VI teams will be at the Columbia Heights Metro on May 28th, next Wednesday, from 3 to 5 p.m. with the Office of Attorney General offering resources for residents and helping folks get signed up for services, do some more public education and outreach, as well as offering support for the community healing effort as we work through this. And then a few housing legislation broad updates. Councilmember introduced legislation to remove a requirement for two staircases, the two staircase requirement in new multifamily buildings with fewer than 6 floors. And the goal here is to increase the amount of space that can be built for residents, making it more economical and easier for builders to create more units or bigger units, which is really great for families. And studies have shown that in the 21st century, with vast improvements in fire suppression practices, single staircases are just as safe as dual staircases. And this won't affect the elevator requirements at all as well. And next, Councilmember also introduced a new TOPA legislation called Common Sense TOPA Reform Act to protect tenants' rights while speeding up the TOPA process. Currently, TOPA is at risk for over 75,000 residents, and the mayor's proposal is with the Rental Act is to also expedite eviction cases. So this is really critical, and a hearing is set for May 28th next week. So sign up to testify, and I'll also share the link below. And lastly, join us next month for Brienne on Your Block office hours, Monday, June 16th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Patango in Adams Morgan. And you can come by, grab a scoop of gelato, and share feedback with our office. So thank you all, and we hope to see you soon.
Thanks, Estelle. I know this is not a presentation, but are there any 1 minute comments or questions from the commissioners? All right. Thanks so much, Estelle.
Thank you, and I just shared a couple of links as well. So if you could just distribute it to everyone, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to other public comments or announcements. I see we have another hand online.
Oh, yes. Mr. Robertson from the Mokers, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, Commissioner Beasley. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Hello everyone. How y'all doing? I'm Anthony Robertson. I'm the Ward 1 manager for the Mayor's Office of Community Services. We have a few announcements, but before I go, if I can real quick, I believe his name is Mr. Kenny, who spoke in the audience. About the public safety issue. I'm gonna also drop my number in the chat. The chat won't allow to do it, so are we doing that in the question on the Q&A? Because the chat was disabled to drop my number in there.
If you drop it in the Q&A, Mr. Robertson, we'll make sure it goes out to the attendees.
All right, so and just real quick, with the walk, and we're asking in respects to the walk, the MPD safety walk that was conducted. Any walks that are conducted, the MPD, whoever's leading it, always can reach out to the Mokers, and we can coordinate and get other agencies out there. If any of the ANC commissioners have identified anything or something we identify, we would get agencies out there as well. So just wanted to make sure that it's clear that anytime that there's agencies need to be brought to the table, please reach out to the Mokers. We would definitely be more than happy to coordinate with that. Real quick, we had the Senior Fest today throughout all 8 wards. It was great. A lot of our Ward 1 seniors came out. And also, as I always do, I encourage the community and everyone to use the 311. You use 311 to for anything. You see something, just be able to log it in. Make sure you download 311. It's very important tool to be able to use. It documents, it keeps receipts, and it lets us know that there's things that need to be addressed. So that's pretty much it for me. If anybody have any questions, I'll be more than willing to answer. And I have one thing else for the commissioners. Is everyone getting your email when something happens in ANC 1A? So anytime something happens, we normally send an email. No matter what SMD is in, we send it to the whole ANC. Is everybody getting the email?
Yeah, Mr. Robinson, we'll make sure commissioners let you know if they're not getting their emails, so,
Okay.
thank you for checking.
Any
All right.
questions?
I don't see any, thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
All right, I do see another hand up here for public announcements from L. Davenport.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Davenport, you have a presentation coming up later in the agenda, so we'll get to you shortly, thank you. Okay, are there any other announcements? All right, seeing none, we're gonna move into our presentations. These are pre-scheduled presentations from various agencies or stakeholders in the community or members of the council and mayor's office. So today we have 3 presentations from Nicole McEntee, the Education and Outreach Program Analyst with the Office of Tenant Advocate, Latoya Davenport, Community Outreach Specialist from the Office of the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, and Adam Carvalho, principal of Carvalho Architecture. We will have 5 minutes for each presentation, followed by question and answer. I'm going to be strict on these 5 minutes just so that we can keep things moving. So we'll go ahead with Nicole McEntee. We can promote her to panelist so she can present.
Ms. McKenty, you should be promoted.
All right, sorry, that took a minute to rejoin as a panelist. Hopefully you all can hear me. Thank you so much for having me. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yeah, absolutely, go for it.
Okay, let me go ahead. Oh, you gotta turn it on, I guess.
There you go.
There we go. Okay, thank you. Alrighty. I'm going to be really brief because I know you've got a lot going on tonight. So I want to tell you what our office does. My name is Nicole McEntee, and I'm from the Office of the Tenant Advocate. And we are kind of a little known district government agency, but we are here to help the tenant community. So we've actually been around for almost 20 years now, but we're a tiny office of about 20 people. So we basically help tenants who are having problems with their landlord. So any sort of dispute that a tenant is having with a landlord, as long as they're a tenant in the district, they can call our office to get advice from our attorney advisors for free. So it's sort of like a pro bono law office, but specific to tenant issues. So we've got 4 branches. We have our legal team, our policy team, temporary emergency housing, and I'll talk about what that is in a second, and then education and outreach. So our legal branch is where most tenants are looking to get in touch with us when they call. And this is where if you're having some kind of dispute with a landlord, you would talk with one of our attorneys for free, and they would be able to help you and tell you, how to resolve that dispute, what to do in court, provide limited or full legal representation depending on the case. So that's our legal branch. So the way to get in touch with us is to call us at 202-719-6560. Or you can come find us in our brand new office. We just moved to a new location now that the Reeve Center is being renovated. So they kicked everybody out of the Reeve Center. So we're now right next to Union Station at 899 North Capitol. But if you're experiencing any of these issues, anything to do with eviction assistance, rent increases, questions about your lease, if your landlord's not fixing things, if you can't get your deposit back, if you have TOPA questions, or just what are your tenants' rights in general, give us a call. It costs you nothing. It's totally free. And we're here to help with that. Our policy branch works with DC government and community partners to advise basically council on what kind of policies we should have. Actually, Estelle stole my line, but we do have a number of tenant bills and housing bills that are coming up DC Council on May 28th, I believe. So next week, there's several hearings on a few different bills that have to do with housing, including the Rental Act. And as Estelle said, that deals with TOPA, and so things like that. So we encourage any tenants who have strong opinions on those things, to sign up to testify. Then we've got our education and community outreach branch, which is me and a couple of other people. And we basically create all the educational materials. We go out and talk to tenants. We're in the community several nights a week. We do outreach events during the day where we table at senior centers and libraries and things like that. And one thing we're also really trying to do is build tenant associations. So if you are looking to start a tenant association or you know of a building who is, give me a call. I go out and talk to tenant associations like 3 nights a week at this point. So, so I'm happy to do that and talk through how to start one of those and how to kind of make that process happen. And we also offer classes. So we have classes on renters' rights at least twice a month. Same with lease 101 and evictions and housing code violations classes. Those are all at least twice a month. The housing code violations one was today. So if you ever want to take any of these classes or schedule one for your group in particular, let us know. We're happy to do that. Then our last branch is the temporary emergency housing program, and this is specifically for when a unit is shut down by either Department of Buildings or HCMA or DC Fire or the Red Cross. So this is usually for like a fire or a flood. That's pretty much the reasons that would occur. And this would provide assistance temporarily to tenants in this situation. So in these cases, they would be provided with 14 days of a stay in a hotel. So we're actually kind of unique. We're like one of the few places, if not the only place in the country, that has a program like this that helps tenants when there's been a fire or when their unit flooded. And so we help them by providing temporary storage and temporary hotel stays. So that's basically it. Our other sort of updates are, of course, that hearing that we have coming up next week for DC Council. So if you care about these housing bills, definitely sign up to testify. We're also planning a stakeholder meeting. Probably toward the end of June. We're thinking about the 25th, but it's not set in stone, so don't hold us to that date just yet. We'll send out a reminder when it is. And lastly, we are trying to plan a tenant stakeholder meeting this year, probably in September. We used to do these before COVID, but then everything shut down during COVID and we haven't really done it because things were all still closed for several years. But we're hoping to do one this year, assuming budget things all work out. So, so look out for that in September, crossing fingers. But yeah, that's about it. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them here. Or if you have specific questions about like your particular situation, always feel free to give our intake line a call. And that's all I got.
My mic is not working. Okay. Thanks so much, Nicole. Really appreciate your presentation. Any questions from commissioners? Questions?
You know what?
I also have one. Go ahead. Commissioners.
Thank you, Nicole. Ms. McEntee, did I say that right?
Yeah.
Thank you for coming tonight. I just have one question. How do you do outreach to renters?
Oh, great question. So like I said, I'm mostly doing like the tenant association projects kind of fall in my lap. So I'm usually talking to tenant associations and buildings like several nights a week. So that's one way is we'll like go to buildings where they're trying to form a tenant association or they want to know renters' rights, and I'll give presentations to them about that. But then we also have things like Senior Fest was today. So we do tabling events where there's any sort of big either citywide event or even a smaller like Anacostia coordinated council. Sometimes we'll show up at those events. So any sort of like CBO that's meeting or any sort of large citywide meeting or DPR events, we try to have a presence there, if only just so we can hand out flyers to people and say, hey, did you know the OTA exists? So if you know of any upcoming events, let us know and we'll always be happy to send somebody there.
Thank you, Ms. McEntee. All right, Commissioner Thomas Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have lights in. Ms. McEntee, thank you so much for being here. Just a few quick questions. Correct me, I think I heard you say you do intend to hold a stakeholder meeting sometime in the fall. Can you explain what that will look like? I heard you said there was a stakeholder meeting, but can you explain who those stakeholders would, be and kind of what that will look like? Well, I guess 3 questions. In conjunction with that, this commission has held annually for the last few years a tenant resource fair of sorts. I feel like, we've done a great job trying to organize that, push that out. Is there something district-wide that you intend to do to try to facilitate something like that going forward? I do know that OTA did those previously. I think they partnered with the utilities and a few others. So it would be helpful to know if a district-wide, resource fair is something that you all have in the works. And then finally, you talk a lot about your role in terms of organizing existing, existing kind of TAs and other groups that want to form a tenant association. How do you do outreach when a building, one, may not know what a TA is, doesn't understand the kind of function and kind of power, if you will, of a TA, and kind of how do you just make that kind of everyday contact so folks know that they can form they can form a TA or just have a conversation with the landlord, because I feel like there's a lot of issues happening right now that could benefit from a lot of residents having that organizing power.
Yeah, that's a lot of questions. So, so let me condense it. So, yes, we are hoping to have a tenant summit again. With all of the budget stuff going on, I can't promise it's going to happen this year because, as we all know, we might lose a lot of money all of a sudden. So, so we would like to plan for it for September, but we are not 100% yet. So don't hold me to that. But that is the idea, is that we would like to restart those tenant summits where we have this big citywide in-person event on a Saturday in September, and we invite every tenant and every ANC commissioner and everybody, really, all the stakeholders and everybody, to show up and take classes and attend discussions and panels and get information. So this actually, they used to do these at Gallaudet years ago before the pandemic. This was before I was with OTA, so I actually never got to see one. So so we would kind of emulate like we did in the past, but I think hold it at our office rather than at Gallaudet. But that's the idea. We're crossing fingers and hoping, depending on all of the budget nonsense. But so that's that answer. And then for tenant associations, yeah, I mean, we want to get on the ground everywhere that wants us and that needs us. It's hard though to like find every building that needs us because there are probably hundreds, right? So, there's 4 of us in education outreach trying to deal with 400,000 tenants. So we're doing our best to try to get out there and find all the tenants who want to form tenant associations. It does take work though. Like forming a tenant association requires that you put in, just like an ANC, right? It requires that you have meetings, and then you have a meeting about the meeting, right? And then you have elections, and you write up, letters and resolutions. So like there's a lot of work, and tenants have to be willing to put the work in to really have a successful tenant association. So we try to emphasize that and get that point across to everybody. So it's tough, but we're in libraries, we're in rec centers, we're at senior events, we're as many places as invite us, or we could possibly sort of insert ourselves to let people know that we're available. So I hope that kind of answers the questions.
Thank you. Yes, can I really ask that person? Yeah, hey, Nicole. 2 things. Quick, can you share your email address with us if you're shareable, where people can go if they want to contact you, or how to get in touch with OTA? We can share it with folks on the line now. That's the first thing. And then I kind of know the answer to this and know that maybe it doesn't fall on OTA, but I want to ask it anyways. I hear from many neighbors, both renters and some homeowners, which doesn't fall into this category, right? But that they had issues with noise from neighboring properties below them, above them, and they don't know how to go address that with their landlord, with the neighbor itself, with the property or the business that's next to them. Is there anything that OTA does helping tenants navigate some of those issues?
It's so funny you asked that because we actually just had a discussion about that in office on Tuesday, I guess. So a couple days yesterday. So noise is really tricky when it's not something that the landlord can help, right? If it's a noise that the landlord is causing or could prevent, then yeah, the tenant might have a case for quiet enjoyment disruption, right? So the tenant has a right to quiet enjoyment of their unit, which means, you know, reasonable, like a landlord would have to reasonably address a concern. But the problem is when it's something that's outside the landlord's control, like construction or street fairs or, you know, what are all bars, all kinds of things like that. So in those cases, I mean, the tenant's always welcome to call our office and talk to an attorney, but generally in a lot of those cases, there's not anything that the landlord can do. And so the tenant might not have a recourse to say break their lease or get something, you know, in return out of that. So that's a tricky question. But I would always say err on the side of caution and call us and ask anyway. And our attorney will look at your lease. They'll look at any, you know, sometimes they have you sign like a noise addendum in your lease, which says like, you understand you live in a city, right? So our attorneys will look at whatever you've signed and determine, do you have, you know, any rights here or is there something that can be done?
Great, thank you. Commissioner Davidson.
Hi, thank you so much for presenting today. I was wondering what outreach OTA does in other languages, probably like Spanish and more one because we have promotion to the population. I formed a team association in my last agreement with LEDC. Is that like a formal partnership that's not with LEDC? How does that work? And are there resources that you offer that are in Spanish and other languages that we can use to give to our association?
So you kind of cut out. I only heard every third word, but I think you asked what resources do we have to work with Spanish speakers? And so the answer is my counterpart in our education and outreach team is a fluent Spanish speaker. So he comes out whenever we have like a tenant association meeting, for example, where you know, the tenants are Spanish speakers, he'll come out and actually be able to, you know, directly speak to the tenants in Spanish. But you know, if he's sick or whatever, we also have two other people in the office who are fluent Spanish speakers. Who work in other divisions of the office. And of course, then we also use the language line if, you know, worst case scenario, if we don't have someone who speaks that language, you know, we'll do language line translation. But the answer is yes. So we have education outreach staff who like actually speak the language.
All right, yeah, just a reminder for commissioners, speak into the microphone as much as you possibly can, just so our online folks can hear us. Thanks for the reminder. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Easley.
We have 2 questions from the community.
Okay, so in the spirit of time, for folks that have questions from the public, we're gonna send those over to Nicole directly, and we'll include information. We can ask for their email addresses as well, so that we can forward those along. We're just gonna keep things moving. So thank you, Nicole, so much for your time. We really appreciate you being here, and we did share your information in the chat, so folks can reach out to you directly.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our next presentation. Latoya Davenport, Community Outreach Specialist in the Office of the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. If we can promote Ms. Davenport. Do we have Ms. Davenport joining us? There we go.
Ms. Davenport, you should be able to, there you are.
All right, go ahead. We'll go at 5 minutes, followed by question and answer.
Good evening, everybody. I don't have a PowerPoint. I will be very brief. My name is Latoya Davenport. I am the 3rd District Community Outreach Specialist with the U.S. Attorney's Office. A lot of people get us confused with OAG, which is the Office of Attorney General. We are the federal prosecutors. We prosecute cases on a federal level as well as a local level. As you may know, that we do have a new interim U.S. attorney who is eager to get out into the community. So if you would like her to attend a meeting so she can hear any concerns that you may be having in your community, please let me know and we can schedule that. We try to take a proactive approach to prosecution, right? So even though we prosecute cases, we also are out in the community, educating the community, giving them information and knowledge. We do many presentations in schools, the senior centers, the RECs. Next Wednesday, I am hosting a resource day where we are going to have different partners come out in one of the hot spots, which is Columbia Heights at the subway station with resources, engage the community, get them some information, hear some of their concerns to see how we can jointly, come up with some type of plan to deter some of the crime. We also do community impact trainings as well as barring notice trainings. On Tuesday, July 8th, we are hosting our 15th annual youth summit that will be held at Catholic University. We have over 400 youth that participate in this day of entertainment, fun, as well as education. They receive gift cards. This year topics is gun violence, drug prevention, and mental health. The ages is 12 to 22. So if you know any youth that would like to participate, please let me know. I can send you all the necessary information. If you would like to receive the monthly court reports, which is a document that has all the paper arrested cases for the month, you could get it for the 3rd District, or I could make sure you get it for whatever district that you may need it for. Just send me an email and I can make sure you can get that. I attend many of the meetings, and the purpose for me to attend the meetings is to hear the community concerns and to see how the U.S. Attorney's Office can help support. This week I had a young lady whose case wasn't papered, so I was able to help her navigate, figure out what detective was on the case, what AUSA was on the case, why it wasn't papered. And so now it's in a different phase. So I'm just here to kind of bridge the gap between the U.S. Attorney's Office and the community.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Davenport. Are there any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Easley?
Ms. Davenport, thank you for attending. I just wanted to bring up 2 points here. First of all, do you mind putting your email into the chat so that we can share that with our residents in case they want to receive the very helpful monthly court reports that you send out? I read them all the time for a good understanding of what prosecutions are occurring. Just one question. I think you talked about a resource fair that was happening at Metro Stop. Is that at the Columbia Heights Metro Stop, or where was that located at?
I'm sorry, the last part cut out.
You talked about a resource fair that you were doing. I believe you said it might have been mentioned, be happening at a Metro Stop. Could you, which Metro Stop?
Columbia Heights subway station, Metro station.
What is that?
It's going to be Wednesday, May 28th from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
And right now, we do have at least 6 agencies confirmed. DYRS, they will be in attendance. They actually have like drop-in centers for like youth that's on supervision, that's getting back into the community. We have MPD, my office, the Credible Messengers for Ward 1. And I can't think of the other 2. I think it's the mayor's office, and I know MPD has been in contact with 2 people. Oh, and we have a mental health consumer called Time for Change.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions from commissioners?
Well, thank you for having me. If you have any questions or concerns, my email and my direct number is in the chat.
Yes, thank you, and we'll be sure to share this directly with the group. Your email address, and you can reach out directly to Ms. Davenport. Thank you so much for your time this evening. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, last but not least, we have a presentation from Adam Carvalho, Principal of Carvalho Architecture. He's on the line, if we can promote.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you great.
Okay, great. Thank you. As I mentioned, I'm Adam Carvalho, Principal of Carvalho Architecture. We are presenting a proposed redevelopment at 1327 Girard Street Northwest. If I'm able to share, 1327 is located here, if you can see on my screen. It's currently in an RF1 zoning district, sort of in between, on Girard Street, in between 14th Street and 13th Street, just a few blocks down from the Columbia Heights Metro Station. Our proposal that we presented at the last meeting nearly a month ago was to, basically rebuild a 8-unit apartment building on the site under RF1 zoning. The feedback that we received was fairly positive and even encouraging to attempt to sort of revisit the zoning in order to increase the density. In that vein, looking at this again with the owner of the property and our team internally, we're here to present an idea where we would actually attempt to rezone this property as RA4. As you can see from the RF1 district, as it sort of meets MU5A, there is a transitional zone of RA4, which allows for a greater density. In our sort of micro area, we have sort of larger lots with apartment style housing. That's not necessarily the same as the RF1 sort of smaller individual lots that you see around that's more prevalent in RF1. So I think that we have a sort of a strong case to possibly look at this as a RA1 redistricting or rezoning, which I think might be more appropriate to carry on the north side block of Girard Street to 13th Street, just as they've done on Columbia Road, just to the north, couple blocks north. I think it's important to note that with the presence of the Columbia Heights Metro Station only 3 blocks away, it gives us a great opportunity to provide greater density with transit-oriented development so close, with minimal negative impact for things like parking and traffic, that really would be hopefully balanced or sort of not present considering how close we are to Metro. Just in sort of speaking of that, I'll kind of go through our presentation very briefly.
You're cutting in, I don't know if it's your headphones, perhaps your microphone.
I'm sorry, say again?
You're cutting in and out a little bit.
Okay, let me see if I can just use my. Sorry, I'm gonna. Can you hear me? Okay, is that better?
Yes. Better.
Sorry, I'm in a business center. I'm at an event that I stepped away from. So as you can see, our original proposal was to present sort of a very traditional, 8 units. We have the opportunity, I think, with still complying with lot coverage and an FAR to provide as many as 29 units here, with a very similar building, just obviously a taller building. In addition to that,
we did, at the request of the last ANC meeting we presented at, to present a increase in our density under the RF1 heading where we are presenting 12 units. But I think it makes sense while we're at this stage to pursue a change in zoning to RA4. And basically wanted to present that and get feedback from the commission, from the public, to see if there would be support for a change in zoning.
Is that the end of the presentation?
I can also add a couple other sort of notes. This is a previous use and occupancy that sort of lists that this property was used as an apartment house. It's sort of silent on how many units were present, but we do have some older street views where it does have our larger sort of apartment building here. And as you can see from the current street view, there is, RA4 development on this same block that is very different in scale than what's across the street, which is more of a traditional RF1. There's also larger plots down at the end of this block that, again, are greater in density and scale than a traditional RF1. So that's.
It's not the time for presentation, so we'll open it up for any questions from commissioners or comments. Yeah, Commissioner Morales.
Excuse me. Good evening, Adam. Thanks for coming this evening. Just turn over here. First, apologies again for the mishap last week, miscommunication on the meeting time. So thank you for bearing with me and being able to be here today. That being said, I also want to commend you and your team for being amenable to the feedback you received from our committee, and that you will probably might hear from our commission today in terms of increasing that density, right? And for those of you who were not at the meeting, the original proposal centered around 8 units with 8 parking spots. We advocated for 12 units and then 4 parking spots to increase that density for housing. So I'm really appreciative of the flexibility on your part. So to ask my question, just for the edification of the committee and the commission rather, and so we have a place to start. What exactly would the relief be that you and your team are requesting from this ANC? Are you requesting that we support a measure to change the zoning to an R4? Was I understand you correctly?
Yeah, our request would be to support a change in zoning to RA4.
Okay, thank you.
And not necessarily, which obviously is a slightly different process than a simple, BMZA, or excuse me, BZA variance appeal, to increase the density under our RF1. But I think we would like to pursue a change in zoning for this lot and possibly work with our adjoining property owners to see, so that zoning would be continuous.
And just one quick follow-up or toss it back to our other commissioner. When is the next BZA meeting that this would be needed to be done by, so we can kind of target that?
We have not applied yet. We wanted to, reach out to the commission and work with the commission first to gain, sort of gain a footing on if there was support or not before we pursued, going through the appeals process.
Hey, you and I can work together on this, and we can bring it up at the next housing committee as well to work on this together. Thank you again.
Commissioner Knoll.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm gonna make sure this works. Thank you for taking the time to present to our ANC tonight. I know it can be a little bit arduous to have to come here for such common sense proposals. This is my single member district. Oh my God, this is not working particularly well. This is my single member district. I think, you know, the notion that we even have these arbitrary lines dividing RA4 and R1 on this plot to begin with is patently ridiculous. This seems like an excellent location for an apartment building. I look forward to, you know, pushing this commission to support your proposal and to welcoming, hopefully not too far in the future, new neighbors to go at it. Thank you again for coming.
Was there a question or just
No,
comment?
no, it's not. The question is, why the hell are zoning cases is difficult, but, you know, I don't understand.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cavallo, if I heard you correctly, can you delineate in more specificity the specific ask of us? It sounds like you need special exceptions to proceed with the current project. So that would go before the Board of Zoning adjustment. It also sounds like there's a larger request of yours to go before the office, to go before the zoning commission to request a change from, I think you said RF1 to RF4. Are those two separate and distinct requests you're asking us to consider, or are you assuming that's one? That's one effort to undertake all at once.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it'd be our first step would be to request a rezoning and support for that rezoning. If we were granted the rezoning designation to RA4, we would be able to provide a building that meets the bulk regulations for RA4 without issue. We would not have to request any further appeals, but we would request support in that change of zoning.
So to go before OC and the zoning commission, how would that change your timeline? Because the Committee on Housing and Zoning would likely have to adjudicate this maybe at 1 or 2 meetings before we, potentially reporting something back to us. So how does that change your timeline in terms of when you feel comfortable completing this project?
I don't, and I believe our client is on the line as well, Mr. Chinloy. This currently is a vacant parcel. I think we don't have a firm timeline on, but obviously we'd be anxious to move on to next steps. But we don't have a definitive timeline. We don't have a vacant building issue. We don't have a maintenance issue with the current, because there is no structure there currently.
Thank you. All right, great. Yeah, so our chair of our Housing and Zoning Committee, Commissioner Morales, and Commissioner Knoll, or his successor, will work directly with you on as that EZA case is applied for and moves forward. I do have a question. I know this is early in the process, and I know that sounds like either the property owner or the client is online. Have you corresponded directly with either of the property owners on both sides of this property?
Mr. Chinloy might be able to answer that question. Our team at Carvalho Architecture has not, but Mr. Chinloy may have, if he's able to.
Yeah,
elevated. He's sending a message that he has not reached out to the adjoining property owners as of yet, but partially that was to sort of check the temperature and check the level of support, but it sounds like there is support for an increase of density. And I think it just kind of common sense personally, with if you look at the size of the lots and the opportunity we have to provide sort of much needed density, especially around the metro hubs within the district.
All right, I do encourage you to reach out to those adjacent property owners. That's a big part of this process, especially ahead of applying for that BZA case or during it. Are there any other questions from commissioners? Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Thank you so much, Mr. Carvalho and Ms. Sapenia. Thank you for your time, and to Mr. Shinaway on the line.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, we are done with our presentations, moving into reports of committees. We have two items here. First is a report from our Permanent Special Committee on Public Life and Neighborhood Planning, and then just our monthly committee reports. For those that have the agenda online, the end of the agenda includes notes from our committees that met since our last meeting, and also folks in person can read that as well. So number one here, we'll go to the report of the Permanent Special Committee on Public Life and Neighborhood Planning. Commissioner Thomas Davis, you want to speak to this? Okay, you'll have 5 minutes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On April 23rd, 2025, the Permanent Special Committee on Public Life and Neighborhood Planning held a regular meeting to consider Historic Preservation Review Board case number 25-06 concerning the application of the DC Preservation League on behalf of the Latin American Youth Center for designation of the property at 3045 15th Street Northwest, Square 2672, Lot 734, to be a historic landmark in the DC inventory of historic sites and nomination of the property to the National Register of Historic Places. The measure was referred to the committee on April 11, 2025, and the committee noted its intent to act on the application on April 15, 2025. In summary, the DC Preservation League seeks to place this property, the quote-unquote old LAYC building, on the DC inventory of historic sites and nominate the property for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. The application and the nomination are a product of a Latin historic context study led by the DC Preservation League and funded by the National Park Service through their underrepresented communities grant program. The URC works towards diversifying listings submitted to the National Register of Historic Places. URC grants are funded by the Historic Preservation Fund and again are administered by the National Park Service. The official list of historic landmarks and historic districts in the district are known as the DC Inventory of Historic Sites. Properties listed in the inventory are designated by the Historic Preservation Review Board. The National Register of Historic Places, established by the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, is maintained by the National Park Service and includes properties of significance at the local, state, and the national level. The committee, by a vote of 4 yeas and 0 nays, voted to report the application to the commission for further action. A resolution supporting the application accompanied the committee's report and was placed on the consent calendar following the commission's May 7th Committee of the Whole meeting. The committee further recommends that the commission examine opportunities to examine the ethnic and cultural history of Columbia Heights, diversifying beyond what is purely seen as a predominantly Latino community, recognizing that Columbia Heights once was a predominantly African-American community, and also understanding that we still are very ethnic and culturally diverse. So we encourage this commission to identify partnerships with organizations like the DC Preservation Group and the DC History Center for grant opportunities, such as the DC Community Heritage Project, which is led by Humanities DC, and they award community culture and heritage grants annually in partnership with the Historic Preservation Office. The Historic Preservation Review Board will meet to consider the application and the nomination tomorrow, Thursday, May 22nd, 2025 at 9:00 a.m. With that, Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee adopt the committee report and accept the findings of the committee. And because R2522, which is the resolution that accompanied the committee's report, is on the consent calendar, I would ask that the committee adopt the report, understanding that it's supporting, that application, that resolution as well.
Is this a formal motion you made?
It is a motion, yes.
Okay.
So moved.
There's a motion on the floor to accept the report from Commissioner Thomas Davis on the Permanent Special Committee of Public Life Neighborhood Planning concerning application to the Historic Preservation Board for the for case number 2506 of the LAYC building at, what's the address?
3045 15th Street.
Northwest. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Knoll. Is there any discussion or debate about this item? All right, seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All against? Any opposed? Great. This report passes. Thank you, Commissioner Thomas Davis. That was perfectly 5 minutes. Wow. All right, we're moving on to B of our reports of committees. I think I already mentioned this is our monthly committee activity reports. Commissioner Keesley, is there anything you wanted to note about this specifically?
No.
Love it. Again, we have 6 different committees at this point. I'll just really quickly call them out for those that are listening. Our Committee on Education, Youth and Family, Committee on Housing and Zoning, Committee on Small Business and Economic Development, our Committee on Public Safety, and our Permanent Special Committee on Public Life and Neighborhood Planning. And we encourage neighbors to get involved with all those committees that meet monthly. Sometimes those meetings are canceled. And again, you can read the notes from each of those committee meetings that were held since our last public meeting in our agenda, which is on anc1a.org.
Wait, it's not just the notes on the meetings, it's also our upcoming events. So you can be aware of what our next objectives are.
Excellent, thank you. All right, we're moving into the consent agenda. Any matters that are listed under this consent agenda are considered to have unanimous consent of commissioners, and it can be passed by 1 vote. So we vote on this in a block. We did not have any commissioner request to remove this from the consent agenda when we approved it. This is non-debatable. There are 2 items in our consent agenda this evening. As just mentioned by Commissioner Thomas Davis, a resolution concerning support of the application of the DC Preservation League for 3045 15th Street Northwest to be a historic landmark. And we also have a resolution concerning urgent crosswalk maintenance and safety improvements along 14th Street Commercial Corridor, as sponsored by Commissioner Knoll, with co-sponsors Commissioner Sherman, Easley, Davidson, and Miller. All right, we're moving into a vote on this consent agenda. This is not debatable. All in favor of passing the consent agenda, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the consent agenda does pass, and both of these measures are adopted by the commission. All right, that moves us into new business. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to go. So let's do it. We're limiting this to 5 minutes for presentations from the sponsoring commissioner, and then we'll open that up to discussion, debate, and a vote. Let's start with our second quarterly financial report for FY25. Over to you, Commissioner Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the French say, les éléments en relais, I will not bore you with this report. You can see the report on the screen, Mr. Secretary. Do you mind pulling that up? This was also diffused to all the commissioners as well. It's merely a formality at this point. You can see from the report here yourself, or you will. I'll just verbally explain what's on this report. So as I said earlier, in my treasury report, we have a ending balance in Q2 of $51,442.29. We had total disbursements of $2,547.71. We had a total funds available during the quarter of $53,990.20. We have total receipts being $13,612.92. Our balance before this report was $40,377.28. Yeah, so you can see there what our disbursements were over the last quarter. Not a whole lot. Some of those funds went through communications, purchases, or expenditures. We had one expenditure for $1,000 grant that we had to pay from a previous authorization, and then some minor purchases here and there for like office supplies and personnel. Not much, there's not much else to this, so happy to bring this to the floor for discussion and debate.
All right, we weren't able to pull it up, but thank you, Commissioner Morales. Are there any questions from commissioners on this second quarterly financial report? Questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call the question.
You can move to approve this by unanimous consent.
I'd like to move to approve by unanimous consent.
Okay, there's been a motion to approve this by unanimous consent. I think we still do need a second on that. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Davidson. Is there any dissent? Okay, seeing none, this does pass by unanimous consent. We've adopted the second quarterly financial report for FY25. Thank you, Commissioner Morales.
Thank you all, and I will send this around to the chairman and the secretary for their signatures after this meeting.
Thanks. So for the public's awareness, this is so we can keep our finances in order and transparency and continue to receive funds so we can disperse them to the community. So make sure we're on good financial protocols. All right, moving on. We're going to letter 25-0009, which is a letter concerning the protest of a Best Stop dispensary. This is APCA application 129285 for a medical cannabis retailer license at 3439 14th Street Northwest, located in Civil Member District 1A02. I am the sponsor of this letter. Quick information. So the ANC does have great weight on liquor licenses, cannabis licenses, and entertainment endorsements from businesses. This was reviewed at the Committee on Small Business and Economic Development last month with neighbors and with business owners present. And a discussion was had. We also did reach out to Best Stop Dispensary. We received a notice from APCA. We had information on who the property owner is, and we reached out and tried to engage with them. We reached out twice with absolute silence, and we have not heard from them. And that's a bit of a red flag for me personally, and it was also a red flag for several other commissioners and neighbors at the committee meeting. So as a result, we are putting forward a protest letter to APCA to protest this dispensary. Now, this does not mean it won't actually happen. This would hopefully provide some leverage to us as ANC1A to engage with the business owner, to understand what they're trying to do, to work with them and make sure that we can enter into an agreement if it's to proceed, but also hopefully maybe it won't proceed if that's the right route for the applicant. So this does outline two things: lack of community engagement by the applicant, and it also indicates that there's another medical cannabis dispensary just about over 400 feet away, a block away at 14th and Monroe. This is supposed to be at the next block, which is what, 14th and Meridian. So there were some concerns about that as well. And I'll stop there. I know that commissioners have discussed this. I'll just underscore this was discussed with neighbors. This wasn't done in a silo. There's been many discussions about this. We don't take a protest lightly. I don't take a protest lightly. I think in my time as a commissioner, this is only the second time we've ever protested something. So it's, again, it is not saying this is not going to happen. It's just hopefully giving us some leverage to engage the business owner more effectively. So with that, I put forward a motion to approve this letter of protest of Best Stop dispensary. So, Mr. Chairman, as a second, moving into discussion. Commissioner Thomas Davis.
I am going to speak against this measure for a variety of different reasons. Before I do, I think I saw my money up to come and speak, and since this is an executive, I will refer to you first.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas Davis. I just want to echo a lot of what Commissioner Sherman said earlier about this measure. This does fall in my SMD, and I did defer this to the Committee on Small Business and Economic Development. I agree with what was said. There was not a whole lot or none community engagement on this. We did try to speak or engage with the business owner and applicant on this, but as Commissioner Sherman said, we don't take protests lightly. So it just shows you the lack of engagement by the applicant. And we're also mindful of the arguments that there are other businesses nearby that dabble in the same products. So we are cognizant of those free market arguments, but it is mostly just centered on the lack of community engagement.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas Davis, when you want to speak, just let me know and I'll add you to speakers list.
Mr. Chairman, I think, our one and two colleague ended off exactly where I want to pick up. And this is solely about the lack of community engagement. The other points that are identified in the letter don't hold a lot of weight. I want to be clear about this. A primary contention in this letter is that we're protesting because of a proximity rule. Now, the DC code does say that a medical cannabis retailer shall not be within 400 feet of another medical cannabis retailer. I don't think how you parse this. If the applicant is over 400 feet away, why is that a point of contention outlined in this letter? That seems to be a moot point. So I would encourage us to strike that. Because if you want to start calling balls and strikes on what kinds of businesses come to our neighborhood solely because of, you know, a rule or a requirement they've already cleared, we go down a very slippery slope. We have a lot of liquor stores that are several feet right next to each other. If you apply this to 11th Street, we have bars, taverns, and restaurants that are right on top of each other. So I urge us to strike that particular point because it seems to me somewhat unnecessary when this business is outside of that proximity requirement. Beyond that, I recognize that community engagement is an issue here, but I take note of how the committee conducted this because on the one hand, single member district commissioners are the ones obligated to negotiate agreements. And so I understand what you're saying your committee did, but at that meeting, which I went back and watched, there were actually only 2 or 3 business owners there. So we have to stop saying, well, we had business people in the room, or we had, you know, neighbors in the room. Neighbors that actually abut the business are the ones that actually have standing and actually matter in these cases. And so when we talk about, you know, who's actually weighed in here, because I listened to all the committee discussion, I did not hear anyone who lived adjacent to or abutting this particular business. So we have to get out of the business of saying we're going to have a handful of individuals who do not have a stake in the actual location of a business weighing in on it. Beyond that, we also opine on district policy around how the medical cannabis industry operates. I don't think that that's something we should stick our necks out on. We know why we have a medical cannabis industry because we have a congressional rider preventing us from having a legal, a legal cannabis market, writ large. So to opine on that seems a little short-sighted considering we know why we have this. And again, we don't say the same thing about alcohol, there are so many bars and restaurants that you could apply that logic to. So again, I would urge us to strike both those provisions and focus in on the lack of the actual lack of engagement with the applicant, which seems to be the primary concern of the district commissioner, who is actually representing, the residents that this would affect. So that's going to be an amendment I formally offer to strike from the letter, bullet point number 2, and to also strike paragraph, it looks like 3 from this letter.
All right, thank you. Since I'm the sponsor on this resolution, I'm happy to put that to a vote. I'm not going to accept that as a friendly amendment. I understand the rationale. I don't agree with it. I think we discussed this. Many things were taken out of this letter. My intent is, if we're trying to get this business to engage with us, let's throw the kitchen sink at it and see what can push back and get their attention and get APCA's attention to bring them to the table. These were concerns raised by neighbors that attended the meeting where we discussed this. Neighbors feel that there are too many cannabis retailers, both medical and non-medical I-71 shops in the Columbia Heights neighborhood. And even though the 400-foot rule was written in DC code, this is like 425 feet, right? It feels too close to an existing business, and that's what we heard from neighbors. And so I know that it's kind of we're not necessarily the ones to call who can open a business here or there or how many feet away, but this was a concern raised by neighbors. It is a concern that it's 1 block away from an existing business. And I think that's something we should say to applicant. Now they can say, we hear you, we're not gonna consider that as part of this, but I think it's still important for us to express the concerns of the neighborhood and us as representatives of that neighborhood. So that's our, that's included in this letter. I'm happy to put that amendment to a vote when we get there. Commissioner Davidson.
Yeah, so.
Oh, sure.
So I know we talked about this about the cow. I apologize that I didn't, email about this interim, but I have to agree with, Commissioner Thomas Davis. I think that the strength of this letter really comes with the fact that the business owner did not engage with us, in terms of the communication. I feel like by adding these other elements, we're diluting it, and if we really want to say that by not engaging with us like that, if we really want to make this about, you need to engage with us, otherwise, then we're gonna bring this to APCA, then that should be what this is about. I also do think that if the law and the rule says that there's a 400-foot rule, to then say, well, then they're above 400 feet, doesn't entirely make sense to me. I do understand the issue or the idea of raising concerns of neighbors, and I think that's valid and that's fair, and that's within our position. I think also just to raise Commissioner Knowles' point, from the cow, with the language where it says that the medical cannabis industry in DC offers benefits and limited pool of registered patients is just not true. Patients are able to self-identify, and so they can always be growing that pool of applicants. And so like if there was a new business and maybe that, they appeal differently or just they were closer, that pool can grow. I don't feel particularly strongly about this. I would vote in favor of Commissioner Thomas Davis's amendment, so I would like that to come to a vote. But I think if we're gonna be doing this on the basis of community engagement, we should be doing it on the basis of the lack of community engagement.
Are there any other comments or questions? I want to make a comment really quick back to that. Like, me personally, and I'm the sponsor of this commission, you all can disagree, obviously. But I think there are too many cannabis businesses in the neighborhood. I do. And so that is a concern I heard from neighbors. And even if the applicant had engaged and had not entered into agreement or did not want to move their business somewhere farther, I would potentially still want to support a protest. I'll just be very honest. I've heard from many neighbors that they feel their concentration is too high in cannabis businesses. So we can focus on the community, the lack of community engagement, but this I think is important to put in here because we've heard from neighbors. I feel compelled to represent that opinion as well. This will not be the last cannabis application that comes before this commission, and we already have approved 2 in the neighborhood, both on 14th Street. So we should think about how many of those businesses, it is tough. I'm very much about free markets, but there is an issue with concentration of these businesses sometimes, and the competition that they have, and the kind of dynamic that they have when they sell the same products and will eat into each other's consumer base, which is not good for any of these businesses. Yeah, Commissioner Knoll.
I mean, not to be too blunt, but I think if neighbors have, yes, that would. If neighbors have concerns with the concentration of cannabis businesses in Columbia Heights, they should take it up with their neighbors who are buying and smoking all of this weed. These businesses are locating in our communities because there is demand. And they are going to compete with each other, and some of them will fail and some of them will succeed. But we just earlier heard about the need to bring small businesses into this community. This is a small business. They just happen to sell marijuana instead of coffee or donuts or whatever, like, I do not think it is a good place for us to be where we're making decisions about what kinds of businesses or where they should go. What sorts of industry should be allowed within Columbia Heights. Like, this happens to be somewhere where we do have some sway because it's ABCA, but just fundamentally, I don't think that's a good reason for us to be opposed. Right? This business wants to come here and employ people and sell products to our residents and pay taxes. We should not get in their way on that.
Just to clarify, I'm not anti-cannabis business.
No,
I
I know.
support other cannabis businesses that open, engaged with us. We're opening in an area that didn't have a business.
Sure. Just, like, is it 3, is it 5, is it 20? I don't know. It's not really up for us to know the right answers.
Mr. Ainsworth.
We've debated this quite a bit, so I'm only gonna say one thing and then start right. So I actually, we discussed this at the committee of the whole, and I'm starting to come around to Commissioner Lowe's view on this. I will note, if we ever do, a letter to the council or outreach to the council about like, hey, maybe you need to change the rules about the proximity, so these are more spread out, I will be up for that, because I also have heard neighbors comment about concerns about the number of cannabis stores in the area. I'm just not sure this letter is the right vehicle for us to know that.
Mr. Chairman, if I can make one final one in the second round.
Yeah, go.
I want to associate myself with the remarks of Commissioner Knoll and Commissioner Davidson, because I think they are hitting on exactly the balance we try to strike here to say, this is largely about community engagement, but at the same time, we are a local economy. If there is a vacant storefront, or if there is some space that is open and available for any business to come in and contribute to our local economy, we should be supporting that. And I want to emphasize, being a medical cannabis retailer, they are popping up everywhere, but it is not an easy endeavor to even apply to actually get a retailer's license. It's $8,000. And the overhead you're paying and everything else that then goes into that. And I really want to emphasize the point that you made. If we start talking about the numbers of folks that are selling the same products and all these other things, there are so many liquor stores that sell the same product. And we do not at any point in time say, you know what, there's too many liquor stores right there. My 104 colleague represents the northern part of our commission. If you just examine your own district, there are several liquor stores that are virtually next door to each other. I'm exaggerating, but I'm just making a point of they are not that far from each other selling the same product. So I hope we will all understand exactly what our 1A10 colleagues said about there was a policy nexus here that we can, try to examine further down the road. But I think right now, we should be positing this protest solely on the fact that we have not had engagement with the applicant. Commissioner, with that, I move.
Oh, I'm sorry,
And with that, I move my previous amendment to strike, again, bullet 2 on page 1. It's also strike paragraph 1 on page 2.
And the last paragraph of page 1.
Yes, I believe this is all one paragraph. So yes, I move to strike bullet number 2 on page 1, as well as graph 1 and graph 1 on page 1 and graph 1 on page 2.
All right, there's a motion on the floor to amend the resolution. Hearing my fellow colleagues, I'm gonna accept that as friendly so we can move quickly here. I hear the concerns and understand it. So let's strike the second bullet and those 2 paragraphs. We're now gonna move into a vote to approve this letter of protest for Best Stop Dispensary, again, with the amendment of removing those 3 items and only focusing on the lack of community engagement by the applicant.
I'm sorry. Well, I understand what we're removing. Can the secretary just get some permission to make, changes that correspond with that? Because we talked about several concerns.
Yeah, the motion on the floor is to approve the agenda with approve the letter with the amendments and to allow for technical corrections. There is a second already, I believe it was Commissioner Rao. Great. Moving into a vote, all in favor of approving this letter as amended, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we're moving on. We have R 2518, a resolution concerning condemning the reinstatement of officers convicted in the murder of Mr. Caron Hilton Brown, sponsored by Commissioner Elena Morales, and co-sponsors Commissioner Easley and Perry. You have 5 minutes, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution condemns the reinstatement of Metropolitan Police Department officers Terrence Sutton Jr. and Andrew Zabowski, who were convicted for their roles in the unauthorized police pursuit that caused the death of 20-year-old Caron Hilton Brown in our neighborhood in 2020. Despite being found guilty by a jury of second-degree murder, obstruction, and conspiracy to obstruct justice, and despite a presidential pardon earlier this year, their conduct violated MPD policy and constituted serious misconduct. This resolution calls on MPD to immediately terminate the officers and urges reforms at the city level, including improved use of force training standards and participation in a national decertification database to prevent officers with serious misconduct from being rehired. It also requests data transparency on police vehicle pursuits and use of force incidents in our community. This resolution would also authorize 2 of our colleagues, Commissioners Carla Perry and Commissioners Billy Easley, to represent us on this matter. And we will forward this resolution to Councilmember Brooke Pinto's office as well, as she considers legislation addressing police chases. Before I yield my time to questions and discussion, I want to again thank Commissioners Perry and Easley as the co-chairs of the Public Safety Committee here in ANC 1A for working on this resolution with me and getting their blessing, as well as Commissioner Bhatia, who did some pinch hitting at the end with some text for our resolution. And with that, I'd like to bring this proposed measure to the floor for discussion.
All right, there's a resolution on the floor for condemning the reinstatement of officers convicted in the murder of Mr. Caron Hilton Brown. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Bhatia. Moving into discussion debate, Commissioner Easley.
When I was 19, growing up in Dallas, I was stopped by an officer when I was coming home from work. And I remember very specifically because I was very tired. I had been working at the booth there and had been working on my college stuff while I was there on break, and really look forward to just being able to rest at home. And I got stopped while I was driving up the driveway of my parents' home. And I remember this officer just came out just screaming at me. So didn't you see me following you for the last few miles? Don't move, don't move. Very scary. She swore that, that she could tell my registration was, outdated or whatever. It was not. She told me, still, you're very lucky that I'm in a good mood. She was wrong again. So I remember going inside and talking to my parents about this. And they told me, I asked them, should I talk to somebody about this? It doesn't feel like what she did was right. And they told me, you can, but do you actually believe it's going to go anywhere? Dallas PD is not MPD. I want to be very clear about that. But I'm telling you that story because trust is a fragile thing and it can be broken very easily. And it took me a long time to view police officers in a constructive way after that. But I did. I really did. To the point where 2 years ago, when I was knocking on doors, and I had a constituent ask me to vote in favor of defunding NPD, She told me that, MPD is completely unaccountable. They don't bring anything to our community. I told her I wouldn't do that. And the reason why, this is exactly what I told her, is because I worked with some of the officers here. When I asked officers to deal with the people who were selling drugs in the alleyway that I live in, they did. When I talked to them about some thefts that were happening in businesses around here, they did act. Whenever I asked them to show up at our public safety forums or to go on our community walks, they have responded to me. They earned my trust. My question for the chief is, what am I supposed to tell that constituent now? If that same constituent was to come to me now and say, MPD is unaccountable, and look at these two officers, are you gonna tell me that MPD is accountable like you did 2 years ago? What am I supposed to tell? Am I supposed to tell that, I told you before that MPD leadership was gonna do the right thing and we could trust them? I can't tell her that now, when I know that MPD brought these officers back. So I want to be very clear about what this resolution is about and what it's not. It's not about slamming the cops that I know who are doing their best, who are responding to us, who want to work with us in our communities. I respect that. They are an important piece of a long list of things we need in the toolbox to make our communities safe. What this is about is a decision by MPD leadership. They could have told us, I've talked to Councilman Nadeau, I've talked to others, they could have been transparent about what was happening there. I promise. If the answer is that the reason why we have to have these officers back is because of some union agreement or some underlying legal concern, we could work with that. But I've heard just silence, and that's unacceptable. So I want to thank Commissioner Morales for bringing this matter to us, and I will be voting in favor of it.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Easley. Are there any other comments, questions, debate on this resolution? All right, seeing none, we're moving into a vote. We're voting to approve the resolution concerning condemning the reinstatement of officers convicted in the murder of Mr. Corinne Hilton Brown. Moving into a vote now, all in favor of this vote, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Mr. Chairman, please report me as present.
Any abstentions? Okay, we'll mark you as abstained, thank you.
Please report me as present.
Okay, the motion is approved. Thank you, Commissioners Morales, Easley, and Perry. Moving on to R 2519, a resolution concerning calling on DLCP and DDOT to physically mark approved street vending spaces in the Columbia Heights and Mount Pleasant vending zone. Give me a second here, I'm going to pull up this resolution. So last month and every other month, we've had Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection come to this meeting and come to this body to speak about the vendor situation in Columbia Heights. We also heard from the beloved Community Incubator Organization, which works directly with the vendors. And we understand how challenging this is. I personally support vendors as being part of our community, but I think the current setup is unsustainable. We have not seen progress and changes to make it a structured program. What we heard directly last month from Director Crow of DLCP is that they don't have enough mechanisms to actually enforce where people can actually vend. And that we asked, could you actually create, delineated spaces on the ground and say, you can vend here, you cannot vend over there. And they said they'd only do that if there was support from the community and only if there was support from the commission and from small business owners. So this is not coming from small business owners, this is coming from us, the commission. This was discussed at the Committee on Small Business and Economic Development, that this resolution puts forward calling on DLCP to explore some temporary ways to block off physical spaces to say you're allowed to vend here and you're not allowed to vend over there. We recognize this is going to take some trial and error to get right. They put up these concrete barriers. We're thankful that they removed them, but the concrete barriers were a negative incentive, trying to get vendors not to operate somewhere. That failed miserably. Can we try some positive incentives? Can we say, these are the spaces where you can vend and do enforcement that? We have to try something new. The current situation is unsustainable. And so we're putting forward, and I'm putting forward, a new idea that we recommend DLCP try. So I won't go into too much more detail. I'll just share on screen here. We're calling on DLCP and DDOT to physically mark approved street vending spaces in the Columbia Heights Mount Pleasant vending zone, work on a trial period using temporary or non-permanent materials, and evaluate the impacts and effectiveness of marked vendor spaces. So with that, I move to approve this resolution. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Commissioner Morales. We'll move into discussion and debate. We'll open it up. Commissioner Davidson.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really excited about this resolution. I think in general, just we know that this is an issue, and I'm excited to just move my discussion on this matter. I just have two questions. The first, okay, I want to preface by saying I think that I don't think the intent of this is to be perfect, and I don't think this is necessarily to be perfect, and I don't think that's the point. I think this, like you said, is a trial thing, and I think this is, we're trying something temporary just to see, you know, what works, what doesn't work. I think that's important as we talk about in the cow. We're gonna need longer term solutions and we're gonna need shorter term solutions. And so I think as a shorter term solution, I think this has, you know, a lot of potential. Do you feel like putting this to both DLCP and DDOT might potentially disperse the responsibility and make it kind of less likely to have real action come from this? Would it be better to go to just one or the other?
My answer to that is that it kind of calls on DLCP primarily and then says collaborate with. I mean, I know that's just words, but I think it's best to send this to both because they both play a really crucial role in any decisions that are being made. So I think both entities need to hear it directly from us.
Okay. And then my last question is, do you think that there's any chance that, let's say that they do this, they put these temporary markers down, you know, incentivizing people, like we're showing them this is where you can go, and let's say it doesn't work and the members don't go there, do you think there's any risk that they could then point to this and say, look, positive incentives don't work, now we have justification to go back to punitive measures or go to negative reinforcement?
That's a good one. I'll admit that. Potentially, I still think that negative, there has to be both negative and positive enforcement, right? There have to be consequences for like not following rules that are put in place. We passed legislation, the council did it, it puts in place, you know, like an actual infrastructure for vendors. And so there has to be rules that they have to enforce. So there has to be some sort of negative. But right now, there's been no positive from what I can tell, like none. I know DLCP says they try to do outreach on getting vendors licensed and all that. We've heard kind of some complaints from BCI who's worked with vendors. We don't know where the truth lies, but right now, the main goal is getting vendors to spread out a little more. The number one thing we hear is like, they're all concentrated in one area and it's blocking ADA compliance and I can't move through it at a very busy corner. So of all the things, even if licensing takes longer, the most important thing is to have them move and more spaced out area. And I have not seen DLCP undergo any efforts to try to incentivize that.
Maybe if I could offer then that maybe it doesn't necessarily need to be formalized in the language of this or in how we, you know, talk about it with them, but that, you know, this isn't the solution, but this is, you know, a way that they should just a kind of a data collection or, you know, this is to see what kind of things work. So, you know, if we're not getting as many people as, you know, as we would like to see, then talking with them and see, you know, asking people, why did this not incentivize you? Why, you know, why did this not work? Or, you know, really trying, if they want to try maybe one thing, then, you know, kind of A/B testing that, or I guess two things, or whatever. But maybe just kind of offering a framework for them so that they can't, really just, if it doesn't work the way we hope it is, like pointing to that and saying, okay, we tried it, now we're like, right now.
Thank you. Yeah, Commissioner Johnson.
I'm going to be opposing this measure for a variety of different reasons. First and foremost, and it's very interesting to hear my 104 colleagues say, well, management is key in the lack of licensure. I have been saying that for months and gotten pushback from the chair and several other members of this body. And that is what I have been saying time and time again, is that, you know, we had a vending zone manager. Their sole job was to organize and bring some semblance of management to vending activity. That did not happen. I asked this body and urged this body to push that to happen. No one wanted to do anything. So I find it very interesting that we're now saying this. This only came about because DLCP Director Crow mentioned it offhand during her presentation. So we have gone around and around trying to find solutions. And I take note, not necessarily how my 108 colleague is characterizing this, but we can't keep talking about doing things on a trial basis. Legislating and policy making doesn't happen on a trial basis. Yes, you always come back and amend something, but you come up with a common sense policy solution that works. I want to focus first on, we are over commercializing our public space. I am speaking as chair of the Committee of Jurisdiction over public space. I hear from residents time and time again about what is happening to our sidewalks. We've heard about no one wants to come to our neighborhood because of how out of control it has gotten. And to simply spread everybody out and say, we're gonna have a free-for-all now. This was a poorly conceived law from the beginning. And it has had poor policy outcome time and time again. I want to also go back to something that my 104 colleague said. Well, the director said we should be talking to businesses to get their assent for this proposal. But you just said, well, this is not coming from businesses, it's coming from the commission. So we can't talk out both sides of our mouth about community engagement when we are not, in fact, doing that community engagement. Businesses needed to weigh in on this. We should be going door to door. And again, not even really understanding where they're going to put all of these spaces, because I want to be clear, the Columbia Heights, Mount Pleasant vending zone goes all the way up, largely upper 14th Street below Spring Road, and goes as far back as, I believe, Columbia Road. I could be wrong about that, but we are over commercializing our public space. We are going to adversely affect small businesses who may not want this kind of activity in front of their front door. Also, we have to, as a commission, comprehensively get on the same page, not necessarily about our different policy views, but how we are going to approach this. We cannot keep just throwing out a solution every time something new comes up. We have to say, how do we bring all of the right stakeholders to the table? Get everybody to understand, what does the actual management piece of this looks like? Licensure, we know that is broken right now. But those vendors have to be willing, absent any of this, they have to be willing to be a part of our local economy. And by doing so, they should be organizing themselves. They should be saying, I want to be as compliant with all the rules and regulations. I want to be as friendly to all the passerbys. I don't want folks having to shout at me because my table is out too far. Because I want to pick up on a point that my colleague said. What happens when we mark these off? One, we don't know if they're going to be permanent, temporary. What happens when we mark them off? And their tables are, 5, 10, 15 feet outside of the designated area. What happens then, right? And I want to end on a very key point. We keep talking about all of these solutions, when the one solution is civil enforcement. Council decriminalize vending. I'm all for that. Give these individuals an opportunity to make a living. but they have to be compliant with the new rules and regulations in place. Until we as a body push for that, to say we need a civil enforcement, structure, some kind of regime that actually works, we're never gonna get anywhere, because who's enforcing this? Who's gonna come out and say you are in the properly designated marked off space you're supposed to be in? That should be our focus, is making sure we have money in the budget for civil enforcement officers, and that DLCP is going to come out and be stationed here at least several hours every single day.
All right, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on this? Commissioner Easley?
Commissioner Davis, if you want to put out a letter, asking for more budget for DLCP to put a dedicated group of people out here to do the kind of civil enforcement you're talking about, I'm all for that. I share your frustration. I'm voting in favor of this. I say, with respect to the record control, you brought this up, so let's pass it and say, hey, look, you gave us an idea. We'll support all these ideas that you want, but at the end of the day, DLCP needs to step up. And quite frankly, I think the DC government needs to actually implement the law that's passed. But I just want to extend that, I see this as an all of the above approach. And quite honestly, I'm quite sympathetic to your approach as well, because things have gotten a little out of hand. So I just wanted to note that.
Mr. Chairman, I know I've talked a lot. I just want to note, I had a provision in a resolution that we voted on at a previous meeting that was struck, calling on civil enforcement, just some kind of movement on that. That was struck from that particular measure. So, and again, I also believe you voted in favor of actually making that change. You actually voted for that. So I just want to note that we have talked about solutions, including civil enforcement, and we just keep going around and around and around. So I just want us to know, we have tried it all, and things that we think will do the trick, we decide we don't want to support. The things that we just want to keep, try to put out there on a trial basis, is likely not going to work. So I just urge us to think more, hard and critical about how we are going to solve this going forward, because it is not going to let up until we as a body decide that we as representatives of this neighborhood are going to say enough is enough.
Before I go, does anyone else want to speak? I'll just be really quick on this, two fast points. First of all, it's not either or. This, you can do incentives on physical spaces of where to vend, and you can do civil enforcement. They honestly probably go hand in hand. So this is not negating what you're saying. Second, the resolution explicitly includes the commission calls on DLCP to ensure consistent enforcement of the approved vending site map and enforce regulations related to vending equipment, such as tables, tents, carts, and other materials left unattended in public space. I know that probably doesn't include everything that you're mentioning, but no one on this commission, I won't speak for everybody, but I'm not anti-enforcement or understanding we need to ensure people follow the rules that have been set up in place. This is just an idea. We're not seeing DLCP do anything right now. Nothing is changing. All that changed in the last 6 months was barriers were added and then barriers were removed. Literally nothing else happened. So let's see that something else happens to try to move vendors to proper spaces that relieve congestion at the 14th and Irving area. Listen, this is not saying DLCP can take this a different direction. They can ignore this. But we are putting ideas forward of things to do. Any other comments or questions?
Quick comment that One thing I do like about this is it gives the respect to the vendors to come into compliance themselves with a positive approach. Not a punitive approach, I think punitive may be needed, but give a positive approach a try. To see if they themselves, having the marketing spaces, having a way to comply, having a way to make the space better allocated, give them the respect to come into compliance.
All right. Oh, that's quite loud. All right, seeing no other comments or questions or discussion, we're going to move into a vote to approve the resolution calling on DLCP&D not to physically mark approved street vending spaces in the Columbia Heights Mount Pleasant vending zone. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Any abstentions? All right, this resolution does pass. We have approved the DLCP&D not physically mark approved street vending spaces. All right, moving on. I'll keep talking, sorry everyone. A resolution concerning support for the Neighborhood Management Authority Act 2025. Hold on, something here, did write something. I'm gonna hold myself accountable to 5 minutes. All right, commissioners and neighbors, I'm excited to sponsor this resolution in support of the Neighborhood Management Authority Act of 2025. Legislation, I believe, represents a critical turning point for Columbia Heights. Let me begin by sharing some history. Nearly 20 years ago, Columbia Heights received a huge influx of investment. After the Green Line was extended further north and the metro station opened in 1999, new housing, retail, and public spaces were not only built, but shaped by neighbors. Columbia Heights transformed into one of the most densely populated neighborhoods in the district, a shopping hub and a culinary destination, and home to a top 10 busiest metro station. It's been nearly 20 years since that time, and Columbia Heights has not received meaningful economic investment since. We've unfortunately witnessed the deterioration of many public spaces and the loss of dozens of local businesses, especially in the past few years. This is in part due to the fact that no central, well-funded entity has ever been established to manage our public spaces and foster economic development. Over the years, there have been organizations that focused on this in bits and pieces, including the Development Corporation of Columbia Heights and District Bridges, who runs our Main Street program. Both have done important work, but they have been resource constrained, operating on grants and donations that fluctuate political winds and budget cycles. They simply don't have the sustained resources to implement long-term solutions or make large-scale improvements our neighborhood desperately needs. We need and we deserve a well-funded, sustainable, and representative entity that can manage and reinvest in the neighborhood. The Columbia Heights Public Life Study, which was completed last year by the DC Office of Planning, affirms the need for exactly this kind of formal place management entity to coordinate public services and support our commercial corridors. Many DC neighborhoods with similar amounts of commercial activity have BIDs, or business improvement districts. For those unfamiliar, a bid is formed by property owners in a given area who agree to impose a self-tax that funds a central organization to manage the neighborhood. Bids have proven their success by offering steady streams of revenue to reinvest in the neighborhood and boost cleaning, offering programming, and do marketing to recruit new businesses. Yes, bids have their downsides too, but let's put that aside for a moment. Even if we wanted a bid in Columbia Heights, multiple attempts to establish one have failed. And this is in large part due to property owners in our area who have consistently resisted reinvesting in our neighborhood. Now we face an even more challenging fiscal environment. The district is confronting major budget cuts for FY26 due to declining revenue and federal interference. There's talk of the Main Street program being scraped from the budget. I don't know if that's true, but I think there's been talk. And I'm deeply worried that Columbia Heights may see even fewer dedicated resources for neighborhood-specific services, and our local economy could deteriorate further. The Neighborhood Management Authority Act of 2025 offers something innovative, a sustainable, accountable neighborhood management entity with dedicated funding and inclusive governance. It would establish the Columbia Heights Neighborhood Management Authority with powers to manage spaces like the Civic Plaza, fund marketing programs to fill retail vacancies with big businesses, and supplement city services like cleaning and community outreach. I want you to imagine Columbia Heights ambassadors with branded uniforms who help clean and maintain public spaces and are properly trained to diffuse public safety issues. Imagine more programming in the civic plaza that bring neighbors together of all kinds. Imagine filling vacant storefronts with large and small businesses neighbors want, and having resources at our disposal to develop and execute a promotion and attraction strategy. Our neighborhood deserves this. Over the last several months, we've reviewed and discussed this legislation at committee meetings and community meetings with residents, small business owners, local art organizations, and other stakeholders, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive. Earlier this month, ANC 1B and ANC 1D passed resolutions of support, with ANC 1E and 4C considering similar resolutions. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to try something new for Columbia Heights, to build an economic vision, to actively recruit businesses to fill vacancies, to improve public spaces, to beautify our streets and enhance cleaning, and to create the cohesion our neighborhood needs so desperately. This legislation is not perfect. There are questions we need to answer and improvements we think could be made. So even if there are parts of this legislation that you disagree with, I urge you to still support this resolution, which calls on the DC Council to examine it more closely, and for Councilmember McDuffie to hold a hearing on this legislation. This is about starting the conversation, improving the legislation further, and moving the process forward. Of all the resolutions that I have put forward to this body, this is the most important yet. This is a massive opportunity for Columbia Heights, but it will only happen if we advocate for it. I urge you to not only support this tonight, but to join me and work together with fellow neighbors to ensure this legislation passes. With that, I move to approve the resolution of support for the Neighborhood Management Authority Act of 2025. Is there a second?
Oh, second.
Second, no seconds. Yes, Commissioner DeSantis.
Public safety isn't just cops. Public safety is about having strong communities that create a virtuous cycle of people looking out for each other, of businesses, vibrant businesses being around and who are feel rooted in the community. And we have so many good things built into Columbia Heights right now, and you can see a vision in place, but it's just not where it needs to be. And I'll tell you, I enjoy working on public safety, I really do. I think it's an important issue, but you see the same issues probably not again and again. And when that happens, you start to recognize that you're dealing with the symptoms of problems rather than the root of problems. This is an issue that it's not just me, many other commissioners have talked about this before. So I'm gonna support this because I truly believe that having some sort of authority in place, incentive in place for us to have money not only arrive into this district, but get reinvested back into this neighborhood is important for dealing with things like the Civic Plaza, for dealing with things like the closing businesses that are happening here. So people feel like this is a safe place. I don't wanna hear I don't wanna see another email from a resident talking about how messy the Civic Plaza is, right? How they don't feel safe. And I think this is one step closer to us dealing with those issues. The last thing I'll say, if you'll bear with me, is I thank you, Commissioner Sherman, for holding multiple meetings about this bill. There were people from Councilmember Nadeau's office who showed up and listened to specific concerns I brought up about this bill, and they are included in this resolution. The term limit issue that I brought up, for example. So to me, I hear a strong signal that the council member is willing to hear us out when we come up with ways to make this better. So I'll be supporting this thing. Thank you for bringing it up.
Sure. I saw Commissioner Davidson Morales and Thomas Davis.
Well, can I ask, for the purpose of structuring debate, who's speaking in opposition and who's speaking up?
No, we're just gonna go with who can speak. We're gonna go to Commissioner Davidson, Morales, and then to Thomas Davis. We're not gonna go in like
But I have my
4
hand
minutes.
before.
I didn't see it, I'm sorry. Please go.
I can try to be brief. I'll just say that I think as a piece of legislation about Columbia Heights and for Columbia Heights and our residents, it feels really important and really significant that we have this resolution, and this resolution in support of it. I think, like Commissioner Beasley said, this speaks to a lot of upstream issues and upstream investments in our community that I think are really important. And I think not only does this resolution just blanketly support the legislation, but it also calls on some specific things as well that I think are important to call out. It encourages the council to hold a hearing on this legislation. I think that it's really crucial that our residents in our small businesses are able to be heard, and I think not having a hearing on a piece of legislation that affects our neighborhood would be a huge missed opportunity and would be really awful. And so I think we can be using our platform to call on the council to hold this hearing. I think as well, it requests the council provide greater fiscal transparency regarding anticipated revenue streams. I think that's really important. It also urges that in the event of this, the legislation is kind of a joint legislation, so it's Columbia specific, and then also the Duke District, which is the district corridor. So it's calling that in the event the Duke District does not go through with their part of it, that ours still goes through. That still feels really important. So there are just aspects of this resolution. It's not just a blanket, like, oh, we're just supporting this this legislation. While I do think that is important, I just wanted to also specifically call out for residents who are listening that I think this resolution elevates some really important points as well for
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to just, I'll have some comments and then I'll answer the question in response to this measure. I like that Commissioner Easley approached this from the perspective of public safety. I think something I've said about this measure before is that it crosses a lot of different sectors. And housing is also no different here. And so speaking as the chair of our Housing and Zoning Committee, looking at this from a affordable housing perspective, this measure is positive. It promotes reinvestment without relying on legislation-driven development. It advances a community-centered approach to economic and physical neighborhood health, making it more likely that working class renters like myself and others, or and other residents, can be in affordable housing and can stay and thrive in Columbia Heights and call it home. So that being said, I do have a question about this, because I know this is something we've talked about in the past in terms of the rest of the ward. I know this would not just impact 1A, it would also impact our neighboring commissions as well in the ward. So just for level setting purposes, if the sponsor of this measure could just explain what the status of the support is in other commissions in the ward behind this. So, like I said, it won't be just us that got to get this to the finish line. And I know we've been talking to folks like commissioners in 1B and 1C. And I think 1D is even introducing something now on this. So I'll end there. This measure has my full support, and I just want to make sure that we all are informed and aware of the status of this effort, not just this measure right here, but this effort to pass an NMA in Ward 1 across the other 4 commissions as well.
Would you like to go and then respond?
I'm gonna actually start where my one of the two colleagues left off. This is about Columbia Heights. So ANC 1D, 1E, 1B, whoever else is, passing the resolution, they're not talking to our residents. They're not understanding the realities we face. We can talk about being interconnected as neighborhoods because we border somewhere, but between the boundaries of Sherman and 16th Street, there are realities that we deal with that no other commission, no other resident is actually going to deal with daily. So I want to put that outside of the realm of what we're talking about here, because this is about Columbia Heights. A lot of people, traverse back and forth through our neighborhood, but they don't live here. They don't deal with and experience what we have to deal with every single day. I'm going to start off with a few pieces, and I'm just going to posit a question that I want everybody to kind of think about as I talk. What if every single neighborhood in the district wanted to do this? Because what we are talking about is basically taking money out of the district's general fund and reapportioning it across the district. Meanwhile, we already have core city services that are also being conducted. So how are we gonna then just say, we're gonna take all the money of it? We're already paying DPW, DDOT, DSLBD, all these agencies that are supposed to be supporting all of the ecosystems in our neighborhoods. Meanwhile, we're gonna take additional funding that is otherwise going into the district's general fund. Might I add, at a time when the district is already under fiscal strain, we're gonna pull more money out of that and say, let's redirect that back to one or two neighborhoods. What happens if everybody wants to do this? I'm gonna hone in on the parking, on the performance parking piece. Performance parking, no matter how dynamic, is going to be a bludgeon to our small businesses. Who is going to want to come to shop and enjoy Columbia Heights if they have to park and pay $25 or $35? Who's going to want to do that? So I think we need to also think about that piece, because on the flip side of that, we have folks saying, well, we don't need cars on our roads. We need folks taking public transit. If you have a bill premised on a financing mechanism that one way or the other may or may not meet the mark, what happens? Because if you say, well, everybody should be taking public transportation, but we have essentially, you know, just kind of undergirded this entire thing with performance parking revenue, what happens when people don't park? You're losing an entire source of the revenue that you are saying is going to drive this. I want to also focus on very quickly in this bill. I actually want to go back. My colleague said, well, we're thinking about this based on the political whims and, you know, various budget cycles. That is entirely what this is going to be based on. If you're only talking about parking and everything else in this bill is premised on the idea of government or, you know, government appropriation of funds, you're still dependent on the district's fiscal health. So, you know, that point falls flat. The public life study is actually not even published. So I don't know how you're going to transmit this saying, well, the study has affirmatively called for this as the solution. Yes, the 2004 study also said we needed some kind of, you know, place management entity, but I would not cite the public life study as saying that because it is not public and binding. I want to go back to the bid conversation. This commission over the last however many years has never been at the table when it comes to a business improvement district conversation. So we cannot talk about, well, we've been involved, we've been engaged. Residents have not been involved in that discussion as well. That Target that is up the street on 14th and Irving is one of the highest grossing Targets in the country. Why are we gonna let them off the hook and not have our residents, not have district residents who come to that Target and shop say, hold up, we're gonna let you off the hook to invest back in our neighborhood, but we're just gonna ask the district to then pony up more money. We have not had a real sense of those big discussions at all. So I need us to stop saying, well, a bid is something that didn't happen or, you know, conversations have failed. We don't know why they failed because we haven't been in the room. We haven't had a seat at the table. I will also focus
30
on
seconds.
meetings. We have not done the kind of engagement on this bill that we need to. We talked about a committee meeting here that maybe, you know, 3 or 4 neighbors were at. That is not a substantive forum to engage on this resolution. I'm gonna end and just say one thing. I think if we're going to call for a hearing on a bill, that is one thing. But to substantively say we're gonna support something before it's actually gone through a hearing, and we know on the other side, all of the implications, all of the fiscal impact is very, very short-sighted. So I would urge colleagues to support me in saying, yes, let's call for a hearing, but let's just kind of cabin that to just that for the time being, because we need to also hear folks at the hearing. We need to understand what is the actual fiscal impact of this, and are these particular financing streams gonna be sustainable? Are they gonna work? Because we don't need to pass something and it not work.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Are there other comments before I respond to a few things? Okay, I want to respond to just a few things. So Commissioner Morales asked about, and Commissioner Thomas Davis asked about other commissions. So on the screen here, both those in person and virtually should see this. This is the proposed map of the Neighborhood Management Authority area. This area up here is past Spring Road, which goes into Ward 4. This is ANC 4C. So unlike Commissioner Thomas Davis said, these commissions actually are impacted by this legislation and do have jurisdiction to actually pass resolutions on it. The other side of Upper 14th Street is part of ANC 1D, who already passed a resolution of support, I believe, last night at their meeting. And then south, our commission area only goes to Euclid. And so south of Euclid is ANC 1B, which is mostly U Street, but there are about 2 or 3 single member districts that actually touch the proposed boundaries of the Neighborhood Management Authority. So I think it is completely fair that ANC's 1B, 1D, and 4C weigh in. ANC 1E, they don't need to weigh in. I don't view it as important, but I think there's a lot of people who come to the Columbia Heights Metro Station, who frequent the area and use it as a corridor and hub that live in neighboring areas. We are sort of the center of Ward 1 many times for people who live in Mount Pleasant, people who live in Parkview. And so it's reasonable for neighbors in those areas to be interested in what happens here. That's point number 1. Point number 2 about the performance parking zone. We don't have a performance parking zone right now. U Street does. I took a photo yesterday, actually, I was walking on U Street. There's a sign up on U Street that says like, the performance parking zone is in effect. Like if you park in this area, whatever. I don't know how much it costs. I think it's nominal in cost for who's parking, but that extra fund, the extra money, that revenue is being reinvested into the neighborhood. Like that's money we don't have right now, and so this legislation reinstitutes the parking performance zone. That would be part of the revenue. I want to just mention that on the bid, the council member in her many years as a Ward 1 council member has tried to engage with the bid, with the property owners. We have DC USA as a property owner, Donatelli Development is a property owner, Horning Brothers is a property owner. There's been many conversations over 10 to 20 years about place-making entities like this, and a bid has not come together. I have had conversations with these property owners, and they have many times said, they've been hard to contact, and they said, I don't want to be the first mover, I'll do it if someone else does it. The other person's like, well, I don't really want to do it. There's just no desire from these property owners to reinvest in our neighborhood. And this is an innovative approach that does it without the property owners. So I know I didn't address all the points. I'm not sitting here saying this is a perfect piece of legislation, but I support most of it. I don't think we should throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think we should look at what works here. I think we should have a hearing. I think we should push the council to make it better. But if we don't support it, it's dead on arrival. And that's the end of it. We have to put forward support to even see this moving forward a little bit. Commissioner Davis.
Commissioner Thomas Davis, I really do appreciate the points you made. I think they're important things to consider, and some of them are things that I hadn't thought about, so I appreciate you bringing them up. To your point about taking funds from the general fund, I think that is an important perspective to bring. I appreciate that that you come from the perspective of having the districts back in that sense. That what if we were to do this? What if everyone were to do this? And I just want to respond to that point. That not every neighborhood in the city is as disinvested in as us, and so not every neighborhood in the city would need to pull funds in the same way, and also that the reappropriation of those funds is not a donation but an investment. That investing in Columbia Heights in that sense really would be creating funds back to the district. It would be investing in businesses, investing in housing, bringing people back into Columbia Heights, and it would grow money that the district would then see in return. I think right now I think Columbia Heights in a way is probably drained on the district in a lot of senses. It takes up a lot of resources, a lot of public safety resources, a lot of money that I think were we more economically developed and resourced, I think we would see that reverse. So I do see what you're saying. I think it's a fair and important point. But I think that it's not the case that, you know, that if we do this, everyone would do this. I think that there are imbalances in development in the district, and I think that this is an investment and the district will see a return on this investment. I think what you were saying about the performance parking is interesting. I think that that's a fair point, that, you know, it's when we look at incentives, we talk about wanting to bring people to the neighborhood, so what is it needed for making it more expensive to come to the neighborhood? I think it's a fair point. I did look it up, and the performance parking zone rates vary from $3 an hour to $8 an hour, so it's not $20 an hour, but it's not nothing. I do think that it is good that, you know, the people who are coming to our neighborhood will be, you know, investing in us, investing in our neighborhood. I think that the people who can't afford it would, you know, take public transportation. I do think there is something to it, though, that there is that negative incentive in a sense. On the other hand, I think that, like, as we're seeing in the street right now, there are still people parked there, and so it's not a big enough disincentive. I think ultimately, I really consider the things that you said, and I think I still fall with where Jeremy's at, which is if we don't support this, nobody will, and we need to, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I am with you that I think we really do need to hear from the hearing what comes with this. But yeah, I think ultimately, I don't know, it feels important to me that I guess that we stand behind it, but I just wanted to hear what you're saying.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Thomas Davis.
if we're on the second round, I'm just gonna try to respond very quickly. On the $20 to $30, I was really being, you know, I was exaggerating, but again, that could very well, we are a different kind of neighborhood, that could be quite different, that could be $10, you know, $12. So I do want us to be clear that though, we are basically premising, I'll just give an arbitrary percentage, but about, I'll just say 50 to 55% of the financing of this is from performance parking revenue, right? And so if we're solely thinking about that, while at the same time, we're making policy decisions as a district saying, well, we don't want cars on the road, we want people biking, we want people, you know, doing these things, then you can't say this sole source of revenue that's going to be kind of the fixture of this, you know, particular entity is going to sustain for the long term. I take the point also that further down the road, maybe there's opportunity, but that we do not know. And I have to say, I have worked where I worked and been in the district long enough to understand. You know, there are a lot of poor policy outcomes as a result of not fully thinking through all of the implications of something this significant. And I know that that may be potentially fleshed out in a hearing, but even if this was to pass council and we had this, there are just so many variables because you're still talking about political wins and potential budget cycles and just, you know, budget gaps, right? And so at some point, yes, there are some different financing mechanisms for, you know, special assessment, you know, districts and all these different things that you still will probably not get, you know, any property, you know, property owners still won't be on board with that. And so I just also want to go back to property owners. I have several property owners in my district and I have talked to them about this. They know very little about some of the long-term aims of this body. And again, in regards to bid discussions, there have been so many different actors at the table and no real stability, maybe aside from the council member, but you have all these, you know, all these non-governmental organizations coming to the table and saying, well, give us this money, we'll be the bid. And so, yes, naturally you will have, you know, property owners saying, no, we want to basically try to come up with something that's going to work, not just hand over all this money to, you know, some community-based organization that's not really doing anything already. I want to also come back to the point of, again, what happens? Because there is no real sense of what can happen if this passes. Other, you know, groups can say, well, yes, you know what, that that bid is not really as democratic as I thought it was. We want this. What happens if somebody says, you know what, you're probably right? What happens, right? Because we do not know the, downstream effects of this. And I just want to end on saying, I care about this neighborhood passionately because coming from Chicago, it's so analogous to all the neighborhoods I grew up in. Bronzeville, uptown Chicago, it's Columbia Heights to a T. And so I know the ebbs and flows. And when I walk around and talk, to residents, yes, they want to solve some of these problems. They really, really want to. But I just want us to get something right. Because we have a lot of organizations that are already active. And so do we create a new kind of, bureaucratic layer by having more people in the mix? And then what about us? We are the neighborhood's voice. So I want us to be clear as well about, does this in some way dilute our voice? If we're saying, well, we're gonna add this other entity that should be telling us, oh, this is how we're gonna run our public spaces, or this is how we're gonna do this is how, that's our purview. That's our job. We're elected to do that job. So I want us to also contemplate, what is that tension? And I know that there are ANCs and bids that coexist, but this is different. This is actually government agencies that can say, we're already in the neighborhood thinking about this, so we're just gonna overrule what the ANC may send to us, or we're not gonna really care about their recommendations because this is our kind of firsthand take. So again, I support the aim of trying to make our neighborhood better. I just think that we are getting full-throated support to something that we don't know fully how it's gonna play out.
Commissioner, your time's up. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to follow the question.
All right, Commissioner Morales has called the question. Moving into a vote. We are voting.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
a motion to call the question is also a motion, so that also.
So it's a non-debatable motion.
The motion to call the question is still a motion, so that needs to be voted on because that closes the debate. We can't just move to the actual measure. I just want to clarify that because we've done that quite a few times.
All right, is there any other discussion or debate? Seeing none, we're going to move into a vote. We're voting to approve the resolution concerning support for the Neighborhood Management Authority of 2025.
Mr. Chairman, roll call vote.
All right, we're going to move into a roll call vote. As requested, Commissioner Easley, could you please do the roll call?
Go first. Commissioner Ackerman. Commissioner Bottier. Yes. Commissioner Davidson.
Aye.
Commissioner Easley. Enthusiastic. Commissioner Knoll. Aye. Commissioner Miller. Commissioner Morales.
Yes.
Commissioner Perry. Aye. Mr. Sherman.
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas Davis.
No.
All right, the motion does pass. We've adopted the resolution of support for the Neighborhood Management Authority Act 2025. Moving on, we've got 3 items. We need to be out here by 10 o'clock. I'm just conscious of our space that we rent. We're moving on to a resolution concerning authorizing expenditures for an administrative assistant to support the operations of ANC. Renee, I'm actually going to turn this over to Commissioner Beasley.
Thank you, Commissioner Sherman. Look, we have a lot of stuff that we have to do in executive committee. And we have a lot of stuff we have to do, just normal tasks, as a commission. We've had an administrative assistant before, and I believe that it makes sense for us to provide further expenditures, authorizing expenditures for, another, administrative assistant. Just as a quick reminder to commissioners, the way that this would work is that we would provide $600 a month with a shared administrative assistant that would work for both 1A and for 1D. I think this makes a lot of sense actually, because there were times with our previous administrative assistant where we just didn't have a lot of work for them. So I think this will provide the right amount of work for one individual. I believe as well that this is Someone for a year.
Yeah, there's a, like probationary period or an expiration that corresponds with the fiscal year, but it has to be renewed. Yes, it's on.
Is that in there?
Yes, it should be.
Yes, sorry, I just want to make absolutely sure before I said that.
Yeah.
But that was something that we discussed, and I think that makes a lot of sense so that we can reevaluate as necessary. So with that, I would like to move.
Mr. Chairman, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a motion?
Yes, I move.
All right, there's a motion to approve the resolution, for an administrative assistant. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, moving into discussion, I heard Commissioner Thomas Davis. Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, at the risk of, we have a standing rule in this body passed in April 2004 that seconds are not required.
This is a new commission, and that rule does not apply because it's not in our rules that are written and codified.
It is
Please proceed, Commissioner Thomas Davis.
respectfully, it is a standing rule that I'm going to speak to this measure because clearly we don't know how parliamentary procedure works here. I appreciate the intent behind seeking an administrative assistant. I served as secretary of this body for a year and a half and supervised our administrative assistant. And guess what? We never had enough work to reasonably justify paying someone to do tasks that are legally the responsibility of elected officers. It is a lot of work, but it's not impossible. And so I worry about a potential, decentralization, if you will, of duties and responsibilities, because it's inherently delegating kind of core tasks about meeting minutes and all these other things that there is no guarantee that they're getting a sufficient level of, oversight or guidance to really manage. I want to go back to a larger point. We're talking about paying $600 per month for what would largely amount to 5, maybe 10 hours of work per week. Again, as with our prior assistant that we paid $800, we blew money because there was never enough work to justify having an administrative assistant. And so again, I worry about the fiscal health of this body if we're just saying we're going to spend money for the sake of spending it because we think we need someone to basically do the responsibilities that as an elected, that as an elected officer may be a little too, time sensitive or whatever the case may be. I also take issue with the fact that we're going in on this with a neighboring commission. We do things differently than ANC 1D. We also run the risk of over-committing because if they have an obligation that they need this individual at, and we say, well, we're also paying you, we need you here at this event, what happens then? So I think that's incredibly problematic. Beyond that, this commission has been somewhat spendthrift as of late. And I know that we have a lot of commitments and obligations we're trying to meet. But this is one that I caution us, we do not need. And we can actually put that money where it can actually be better spent. So I would urge us to table this, continue to have a discussion. We have a lot of things coming forward that we can reconsider this following our July recess. I'm sorry, the August recess. We also talked about a potential sunset clause. The fiscal year ends September 30th. So are we really gonna hire somebody with the understanding that they're not gonna have a job in 4 or 5 months? So I just want us to be mindful of what we're doing here. Let's focus on really figuring out, putting all of our heads together and not just having one individual have a conversation with a, neighboring commission because we've all seen what our prior administrative assistant was able to do. There was just not enough work for them to actually get, you know, any real sense of how we're justifying paying $1,500. $600, $800 is not that far off. This is not how we should govern this particular body.
Commissioner Morales?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make 2 points. One, since finances were brought up in reference, as the treasurer of the commission, I don't see any financial difficulties coming from this. I think we are flush with money. We have, like I said, we have over $50,000 in reserves. I don't think we're going to be going through that anytime soon with this interim or temporary decision that we're setting up here. I just don't. And I think we discussed this at the committee as a whole as commissioners. My second point is, and I'll just give a quick aside here to kind of give context for my point. I'm a history teacher. I give a whole lesson today on the difference between nationalism and international. Nationalists tend to be inward facing and focus on themselves. Internationalists prefer to work with others and solve global issues. Obviously, we're not a country, and I know that we are the Columbia Heights ANC, but we do live in a society and we do live in a ward, and we did take a pledge to serve the rest of the District of Columbia. And I think there's nothing wrong with us exploring past our bounds and working with other commissions on this. Other commissions have their own way of running things, sure, but that's part of the collaborative process that we can encounter with them. And to Commissioner Sherman's point from earlier, or Commissioner Thomas Davis' point from earlier point rather, I don't think we need to entertain hypotheticals right now. The point that he made is fair, but we can cross that bridge when we get there with our colleagues in Wendy. I don't think there's an issue.
Thank you. Commissioner Easley?
Call the question.
Okay, there's a motion to call the question. And so we will vote on ending discussion. All in favor of ending discussion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Any abstentions? All right, we do end discussion. Moving into a vote. We are voting on a resolution to authorize expenditures for an administrative assistant to support the operations of ANC 1A. I will note that ANC 1D passed this resolution last night. Moving into a vote, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Any abstentions? All right, this motion does pass. Okay, we're moving on. We got 2 more. A resolution concerning grants for World Pride 2025 as sponsored by our Commissioner Christine Miller, who's currently in Italy and not at this meeting. As a backup, Commissioner Easley, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I object.
Yeah, would you please allow Commissioner Easley to speak to this before your objection?
He cannot move the measure because it conflicts with our rules. So procedurally.
Okay, you can make a motion to it.
Actually, I'll say this first. I would like to make a motion to waive the rules as applied to the, at least a 3-week requirement before we can provide grants. And just to reiterate on this, I brought this up at Cal, I understand this, but if we do not pass this now, these grants will not go out.
All right, so there's a motion on the floor, not about the grants themselves. It is to waive the rule around 3-week notice of grant applications. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Knoll. We're gonna move into discussion around waiving it. Who wants to go first?
I want to amend the motion because there are 2 provisions of our grant rules regarding 3 weeks notice, as well as having the applicant appear before us.
Okay.
Again,
I accept that. Amended.
Since this new term has started, we have done a lot of things the wrong way. We have set a lot of precedents that go afoul of our own rules. And if we're not going to follow our own procedures, then who is? And so I'm speaking as an institutionalist that cares about the fact that, yes, every time we do something, we are setting a precedent. And it takes us down a path where we're picking and choosing when to support something that someone cares about. Because what's to happen, 3 months from now? I have a measure that I want to bring forward that maybe everyone's not as enthusiastic about. It could be, say, a grant to, and I'm just saying this hypothetically, but it could be a grant to, put up, erect a barrier at the Civic Plaza. And somebody who's enthusiastically in support of erecting that, that barrier, they don't want anybody there. What happens then if they say, well, you know what, I'm gonna come to the meeting right now and I wanna present that? Are they gonna be allowed to, based on what we do here today? I also just wanna note where we're going on these grants, specifically for World Pride, we authorized funding that it looks like we literally went hat in hand and said, we have all of the, all this money, give us events that you wanna do. Because I don't see where applicants are coming to us saying, this is what we wanna do, this is how we're gonna support the neighborhood. Finally, one of the grants that was put forward, I want to speak to, I believe it was the Senate Queer grant. The guidance that I believe the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions offered as guidance, because I remind my colleagues, we are the final say on how we interpret our own rules, says that the applicant would need to do some sort of outreach to the community. We responded back and said, well, we will consider our outreach done through our newsletter as satisfying that requirement. That is not how that works. An applicant has an obligation to do their own outreach and engagement to ensure that 1A residents are going to show up. So I don't understand why we're going to say we're approving a grant and then we're going to do the work that the applicant is required to do. That just strikes me as a little weird there. And so again,
1 minute.
we're setting a precedent whereby we're not following the rules that we set. A year.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, who's next?
Yes, as I brought it up, so I guess we are still on the question of whether it is right, the motion is about waiving rules.
Yep.
Commissioner Davis is correct about one thing. I do not think it's good practice for us to waive our rules consistently, right? The point of rules is that they are general guidelines that we need. And if they're not meeting the requirements that we need, then we change those rules. But listen, we have a choice, right? We already authorized the spending of these funds. The point about the City Queer Festival that Commissioner Davis brought up is a wonderful point that should be discussed when we are talking about the merit of the resolution itself. This conversation is about whether or not we want to waive the rule. So listen, if you all are uncomfortable with waiving the rule, vote against it. But be aware that that means that you're not going to be able to get the money out to these institutions in time for World Pride events. And that's okay if that's the decision that you make. But I do feel like this sort of point that we're bound by these precedents, we're not forced, right? That's just what I would end.
Okay, I'll try to be fast and we can literally 5 minutes. Okay, I think I agree with you, Commissioner Thomas Davis. I think if we're gonna waive the rules, I think there needs to be a methodology behind it again, so it's not just like what are we doing? To me, I think World Pride is, this is a timeline that is being imposed upon us. And so for that reason, I feel like we can, I understand, we could have predicted it, we could plan for it, but to me that, that feels like kind of a different circumstance that was in. Commissioner Easley, I would like to hear why the grant applicants aren't.
I think it was merely yeah, I think that's fine for this. I'm trying to stay true to the bounds of the conversation allowed. But look, I do not know why the grant applicants are not here. I'll just be frank with you. That is a question for Commissioner Miller or anyone else who has really interacted with them. I would urge you from being in text messages with Commissioner Miller and emails about doing lots of outreach to these applicants, I strongly believe that it is not a sign of their commitment or lack thereof that they're not here. I think it might just be because they're on a deadline too. But that's a fair point to raise, Commissioner Davidson.
Would we accept something like, they need to meet with us at a different time, with one of us, something like that?
You know what? I think that's a great idea. I know we're near your time here, but this is what I'll do. Tomorrow, I know that Commissioner is out right now, so I'll update her on this, but I'm fine with reaching out to them and doing a Zoom call, making sure that we feel more comfortable about this. I think that's a perfectly fine idea.
Yes. I'll just be quick. I think this is a perfect example of this sort of debate, chronic debate that we have as a commission about when it's more important to follow procedures and rules, and it's more important to serve the community that we're elected to represent. I think, yes, we have a rule and it should be followed, but I think what's more pressing here is that we have, like Commissioner Davidson said, we have a timeline that's been imposed on us. And we could discuss ad nauseum why the ANCs are not here. That's not the point. We're here now. And I think that if we don't waive these rules and get this grant approved, we're doing a disservice, and we're gonna have egg on our face as a commission for not doing anything with this money that we had allocated previously.
Speaking of time being imposed on us, we have, our clock is ticking on the space. I'm calling an end to the discussion on waiving the rules for both the time and the presence of the grant applicants. All in favor of waiving those rules, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Any abstentions? All right, the rule has been waived. We're going back to the resolution on the grant itself. Given where we are right now, I'm imposing a 2-minute speaking timeline for anyone who wants to speak. I'm sorry, we have a time crunch. We'll bleed over a little bit. Commissioner, are there any further comments on the World Pride grants?
I'd rather hear questions from other people.
Okay, questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, we're moving into a vote on the resolution concerning grants for World Pride 2025. This notes 3 different grants, one to the AIDS Memorial Quilt, held at the Mexican Cultural Institute on 16th Street, one for a Cinequeer Film Festival at Dandelion Collection on 14th Street, and a series of events at Bloom Bars on 11th Street, if I'm recalling correctly. Yes. Moving into a vote, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Any abstentions? All right, the motion is passed. All right, we're on our last thing here. This was an emergency resolution put forward. All of you should have received an email from the Office of Advisor Neighborhood Commissions about technical assistance funds for hybrid equipment. There is no mandate on the equipment, but there is money that is being dangled in front of us that we have to officially authorize the commission in order to get. So I am putting this forward, this resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Ainsley. Any discussion, debate, questions?
I'm just gonna briefly note what's in email circulation we received and being aware of what was already discussed. There is an imposition on the kind of equipment we will be obligated largely to purchase. Some of the accessories and some other things may be up in the air, but I think it's evident from this meeting, a lot of residents will be able to hear us. I'm quite sure that the video is not coming through as crisp and clear as everyone needs it to. So again, I'm gonna be opposing this only because I don't know if we have enough information to say that we should just allow ourselves to be kind of fixed with the equipment we can purchase. So I'm gonna be voting no.
Just reiterate, there's no requirement on the equipment for this one.
But do you know that?
Yes, I received an answer from ANC stating that blankly and forwarded it to all commissioners. Okay, any other comments or questions? We're moving into a vote to approve this. It's just authorizing OANC for technical assistance funds. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Any abstentions? All right, the motion does pass. We have reached the end of new business. There's no other business. We are at adjournment. Our next meeting is June 18th Wednesday, June 18th at 7 o'clock, right back here and on Zoom. Thanks for everyone who stuck with us. And this meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you.
Look at us being proud of this.